Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me today is the usual crew minus one. We've got Josh Torres.
Hi, hello.
Adam Vitale.
Chow will maybe show up.
Yeah, Chow is the minus one. He sometimes shows up late, and if he does, we'll just admonish him for it. But then we will accept him with open arms. We also have James Glizio.
Hey, folks.
It's already, at the time of recording, April 30th? Where did the month go? I know all of us have had some sort of life events going on the month. We've had a few podcasts where certain different people were missing. So it's been a busy time in real life. It's been a busy time in gaming space. We've had PAX East, even though it didn't have a ton of bombshells out of it. We had a few features coming up out of that. We were able to have one of our site contributors, Scott White, over to look at some of the offerings over there. We've got a few features up on the site outside of that. We've got some reviews in progress. We got some games that we can't quite talk about yet. And we've kind of got some time to talk about games that we've been getting back to, games on the backlog, things like that. Let's just kind of roll right into it and see what we have to talk about for this week. I guess I'll just start out with the, should I start out with the features or should we just start out with the games we've been playing? Because it's kind of a hodgepodge.
Yeah, let's start off with the features. I mean, since you mentioned PAX, Scott wrote up a big trio of things that he saw over there.
Yeah, so Scott was able to go to PAX East for us. Now, by his own admission, he said it was a little bit smaller scale than we've seen in the past, a little bit. He was able to see a lot of what was there to offer in just a little over a day. Things are still kind of, rolling back into normalcy outside of the last 2 years of hell, or whatever you want to call it. But there were still a couple things from there that he thought were really interesting, really worth sharing, and he just blitzed out three cool features for the site for his time at PAX. The one that I thought was most interesting to me was a feature for a Ogre Battle fan-made spiritual successor in sort of ways, inspired by, called Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga, which, I don't know, that's not a great name, I don't think, but it is a game that looks very much like the tactical RPGs of, 15, 20 years ago. And he was able to speak with basically it's pretty much like a sole dev experience for this game, Symphony of War, and he was able to write up his feature on it, and it did pretty well on our social channels as he shared about it. This game doesn't have a release date yet, but it is slated to release this year. That was the first preview that he was able to put up. I don't know if Adam, if you had any other thoughts on this, because I think you were the one that also had a lot of interest in this game.
So apparently it's also inspired by Dragon Force for the Sega Saturn, which I've never played, but it does have that basically mix of kind of real-time strategy, or not real-time strategy, like a Fire Emblem type tactical game, as well as these sort of squad-based battles where you have like groups of units that are fighting each other with this pixel art style. It looks interesting for sure. I don't know if it's something that I'm going to be playing right away. Maybe I'll just see how how impressions are. But it's definitely, of the games I saw Scott talk about at PAX, just like you, it's definitely the one that looks most interesting to me.
So that's up on the site. Just go to our articles tab. You'll see it there as his 3 previews are the most recent ones on there. Before we go into the next preview, just speak of the devil. Joining us is Chow Min Woo.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
How are things?
Good, I think.
You just woke up?
No. I was watching this Final Fantasy streams. So
Nice.
We can talk about that a little bit later once we get to that.
So the other feature one of the other features that Scott was able to put up from PAX East was for a game called Wrestlequest. Now, I will just say, just from the outset, I have no interest in wrestling at all. So when I see this game, I'm just immediately not interested. But if you are, this is a a wrestling inspired JRPG styled game. So
it's neat, to be honest, it kind of reminds me of how Dodgeball Academia, for example, how it kind of blended an RPG with the dodgeball sport. And it's this is pretty neat. So when I saw this, I'm like, this kind of, even though I haven't watched wrestling in years, I'm like, I think it's really cool for developers to explore and kind of meld these two genres and see how it shakes up and how you take certain aspect, like how this game has a height meter during combat, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on a sort of combination of theme and genre that almost certainly doesn't exist yet. I don't want to say that with absolute certainty, but if this is something that really interests you, it is slated to come out this summer. It's from an indie studio called Megacat, and we've got another preview up on the site. Scott was able to look at that, and I think he, unlike me, was really interested in the premise, and so he's kind of shared a lot of his enthusiasm in his little preview for WrestleQuest, also up on the site. And the last game that he was able to look at PAX East, well, not the last game he was able to look at, but the last preview that he's gotten written up for the site right now, is a game called Demeo, or Demeo. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. Now, this is a game that released last year as a VR title. However, now it'll be available for anyone with a PC in a non-VR mode. And it's kind of like a tabletop RPG sort of VR-focused game, though now it's playable non-VR, which obviously VR headsets can be like expensive, or some people just don't like the style of them, or they don't like that style of game. So it's kind of cool that now it has an officially supported non-VR mode, because I do know when games like Half-Life Alyx came out, people were trying to create like modded fan-made non-VR mode. So it's cool to see the developer kind of also go for that and kind of give you the option about which mode of the game you want to play. So one thing I can't quite tell here is this non-VR mode already available, or is it coming out soon?
Because it just came out in early access.
So the game in VR is out. The non-VR mode is out in early access.
And also it's the sort of thing where basically the games are like cross play, cross progression to save and all that. So like you basically can play the same game in VR or not.
That's fair. That's neat.
I think that's really crucial for this kind of game, because people who like previously, if you wanted to play this game, you need to have like multiple people with VR setups to play this. Now you can just like hop into a game. You don't have to like wait for like rely on people like, hey, do you have a VR headset to play this game? Now you can just play with people who like are giving it a shot. So it really helps like that VR community out for this game.
Mm-hmm. And it might be, instead of saying like, I don't know if I like VR, I'm not sure if I want to invest in a headset or get the equipment. Now you'll be able to try a game and kind of get a feel for it and be like, okay, now I'm playing with people who are playing this game in VR. It's a way to kind of try it out and not just dive head in if you're not like as much of an enthusiast as someone who's just like willing to take the risk that they might not enjoy it or something like that. So kind of a cool way to demo the tech, or at least kind of get a feeling for what you might experience before diving in completely.
Yeah, Scott really liked his time with Demeo. Basically, it's like a tabletop experience, kind of like a pen and paper sort of RPG adapted to a video game. So it does have like a single player skirmish mode, but it's really meant to be, like played with two other players, I believe, as sort of a, like a campaign, like a D&D campaign almost, only as a PC game. And he said he really enjoyed it in his write-up.
So yeah, if you go to rpgsite.net and click articles, his 3 previews at the time of recording are right near the top, all from Scott. So go ahead and give those a read. We've got Symphony of War, WrestleQuest, and the non-VR PC version of Demeo. As for games that we've been playing in absence of not attending PAX East, it's kind of a mixed bag. We've mentioned that April has been a time for some of us to play some of the MMOs that we've been working on, some games in our backlog. I think Adam has been playing some games just like randomly out of a hat. That's what it feels like to me from a distance. And then we did have one release that we talked about and we introduced last week in the podcast that was the new RPG release of the week. And we'll probably just open with this one. And this is the new game in the Mana series, Echoes of Mana, which was announced during the series. What was it? Was it the 25th or the 30th anniversary event a few months back? One of those big milestone anniversary events as the big Mana game for this year, and released last week. And I do know that Josh has at least started it and tried it out. So I'll hand it off to Josh and just ask you what your thoughts are about Echoes of Mana.
A big week for Mana fans, am I right? So this is the new entry, as you mentioned, in the Mana series for mobile devices. Echoes of Mana. This is sort of like, it's your typical sort of like mobile entry into a like a long running series. So there's like it's pulling on a lot of like previous games to fill out its roster. So this has characters from the first 3 Seiken Densetsu games. It has people from Children of Mana. It has people from Dawn of Mana. Sort of setup. It's a very basic setup. Is that you can choose between a male or female protagonist, and then their default names are Kilito and Kilita, the Q. And you're sort of kind of like a dimension hopper in a sense, and your like main hub is like this sanctuary of mana, like the last mana tree, and you're tasked with infiltrating echoes, which are like dimensions to other mana games, to find the mana sword. That we're not exactly sure yet in the story like what they're trying to use the mana sword for. Like in most mana games, probably for like the restoration of the world and so forth. It's kind of a weird one where it has like an original like world like that's exclusive to Echoes of Mana, and then after you like complete like one part of that early on, like you're barely getting introduced to like, hey, like these are the other side characters to Echoes of Mana, and then there's also this mysterious dark armored, almost like a Dark Knight almost, who's like kind of like chasing you around, and you're not exactly sure what their objective is, but you know that they're just like the bad guy right now who's chasing after you and trying to make sure you don't get the mana sword. So whenever when he shows up, you have like this creature with you. That's, I forgot what it's called. It's like a white fluffy creature that like helps you like dimension hop back into the sanctuary of mana, like retreat, because you can't take on that per person. And then after like confirming, okay, in this echo we couldn't find the mana sword, so let's go hop into like the secret of mana echo. It's not like these echoes are very like bite-sized chunks of the games. They're not like we're starting at the very beginning of Trials of Mana or Secret of Mana. They're like very specific points of time in that game. Like when you go into Trials of Mana, yeah, you meet up with Reese and then later Hawkeye, but it's not like starting from their stories. Like it's like somewhere in their journey. Like Reese has already gone off and tried to find her brother, and it's an ongoing storyline. It's not like from the very beginning of Reese's storyline. In that, just like the Mana games, as you would expect, especially like Trials of Mana, it's a action RPG. You move around. If you're playing on a mobile device, you move around with not necessarily a virtual joystick, but you're still like kind of moving around by kind of navigating your character just without a joystick on the screen. And it's kind of like a 2.5D plane where you can like move like up and down, left and right, on this plane, and you can bring up to two other playable characters with you during battles. But each of the three characters with you can also have a sub character with them, so you can have a grand total of 6 people with you when you deploy like a party. And then anytime you like swap characters, they can swap to a sub character as well. On that,
is this the first mobile game in the Mana series?
Yes,
I think there was more. There was like Rise of Mana, and there was.
Oh, I mean, like, are you talking about like mobile or handheld?
I think Rise of Mana was a browser game, wasn't it?
Was it a browser game? I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
I remember it was like ported to Vita once or something.
Oh no, it was mobile and Vita.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I
thought it was a browser game too.
I like how Chow can immediately be like, "Yeah, Rise of Mana released on iOS 2014, guys. Jeez, come on."
Yeah, come on, no.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, no.
I also installed it too.
Yeah.
Say that again, Chow.
I said I also installed Echoes of Mana to give it a try as well. Didn't
have you tried it yet?
Too far. Yeah, I did. Okay. I got to like the 3rd chapter.
Yeah, so like it has problems. Let me just like lay out like the gameplay to get a better understanding. But yeah, it is by no means perfect. Yeah, so as you're going around these stages, you have an attack button at like the bottom right corner, and then you have like 2 skills per character. Like their first skill is usually offensive, and then their second skill is sometimes like a buff or a heal. So but it varies. That's not necessarily always true. Like Sumo from the Adventures of Mana or Final Fantasy Adventure has like both of his skills are supportive. They're not any attack skills. One is like a defense buff, and one is a heal. And aside from the attack button and the two skills, they also have like a special attack that they can use after you charge it up after like attacking enemies. So they have that like special like skill that they can cast on enemies, and also like what was it called, like a mega mana attack or something. I forget what it's called.
There's like a spirit attack at the. What is it? There's one attack where you use a spirit, and there's this one like regular super attack.
Yeah, the regular super attack, and then like the big ultimate attack where you like use 3 of the same move to like fill up a 1/3 of it, and then once all 3 like portions of it are filled like a pizza, then you can use that like ultimate like big skill on that. But the stages aren't like they're sectioned off into like certain sections. Like you go into the stage, there are enemies to defeat. After you defeat them, you go into the next section. You go defeat enemies until you go to the next section until there's like a boss room. There'll be special like scout stages where it's almost like try to emulate a mana dungeon, where like for example, like they have the Trials of Mana. What was the mountain called? They had that puzzle from Trials of Mana where like you had like those blockheads who spew wind, and then you have to like use devices to like manipulate where those blockheads are facing, so you can go past where they were trying to block with the wind.
It's called the Gust Hall.
Thank you, the Gust Hall. They do have something, a stage that has that. They also have that that forest where you don't know where you had to go, and if you went into the wrong way in that forest, you would get teleported back to the beginning. So you had to go like follow like the little like sparkly exits in that forest to like proceed on. And if you diverge from the path, you would start back from square one. I forgot what that was called as well, but it was also in Trials. So they have some stages that evoke some of the puzzles you may experience in the previous Mana games. I think this game would be like decent if like it was more responsive. I don't know about you, Chow, but like when I like play this game, I'm like, man, this could be really cool if if the technical performance was better and like the button actions, like your inputs were more responsive.
Are you playing on semi-auto mode, or are you playing manual mode or auto mode? That's a question.
So I've experimented with all of them. Like full auto mode is what you would expect. So it has 3 like auto modes. Um, Full auto is like the game displays itself for you, and then your typical like full manual mode or just manual mode is if like you press attack at like away from the enemy, it'll just attack right there where you are on the spot. Same thing with skills. And then semi-auto mode is you get in range of the where you could like reach the enemy with an attacker skill, and it'll do that for you. Like it'll get you into the right range to execute your attack and hit the enemy. And go for it, John.
I hate to make comparisons, but it's like a Tails game. There's a semi-auto in Tails games where you just kind of run up to the enemy just like the same way it does. But yeah, the controls isn't exactly the most responsive, but one way I look at the game is this is a 2D Dragalia loss, guys. It's like you got the same grinding structures. You have to grind these spirit coins to upgrade your characters. You got like all this thing. It's like it's just
so it's like it's like in some ways, yes, it is like Dragalia in the sense that it definitely. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's an evade button as well, so you can actually just like in the middle of an attack stream tap evade and you'll evade out.
It's there, and there's like enemy line of sight that does special attacks.
Yeah, like when you're going against boss battles, they'll have like the zones where they're about to attack, and then you have to get out of there. But it really like I wish it was more like tactical, like Dragalia Lost. Like it is like in like normal difficulty, but once you start getting to hard and like harder stages and like very hard stages, it becomes more of like a DPS check of like you're gonna win it or not, and your AI is like just fucking dumb. Like no matter what preset AI you can use for them. Because like you can actually like manipulate like AI behavior in their status screens, like well balanced, healer, or all out attack, and like it's supposed to like make a difference on like how they're supposed to act. But the AI will always like stand in like zones where they're not supposed to when the enemy's about to attack. It's hard to like rely on them to kind of keep themselves alive, even if you put them like in an AI behavior mode where like they're supposed to like back off and try not to be as aggressive to preserve their own HP. No, none of that. It barely makes a difference. They're just going to be really dumb, and you either have to just accept that they're just going to die in battle, or try to be a god and like manipulate their positions right before an enemy attack is fired, which is they don't give you much time to do that at harder stages. And AI is just a joke in that game. Like that's why I prefer playing ranged. I'm just like, at least I can control like how I want to my angle of approach and be relatively safe. So at least I know I'm doing my job, and then the AI is just living in their own fantasy world.
You know what? It's following the Trials of Mana structure. Okay, have you ever played the Trials of Mana remake? You can play this game perfectly, but the game is hard in some ways. It's because the AI keep dying, and so you're the only guy alive because you're actually dodging shit. The AI just doesn't know dodge shit.
Yeah, and I wish more games would like just adopt like a system where like, hey, if you're not the active playable character, like let's say you switch to a character, I would hope that like the game is smart enough to at least like buff like the defense of like the people that you're not playing, or at least like make them less aggressive or make them like take very little damage if you're not controlling them, if the AI is going to be that dumb, instead of like you just still suffering full penalties for just not controlling them, period.
Yeah, and they
Because,
could balance that by having them do like less damage or whatever, but having two AI partners that don't deal a lot of damage but they stay upright, this probably feels better than just having them dead on the floor for the whole fight.
Yeah, so a lot of action RPGs commit this sin, and I don't know why people haven't figured it out yet.
So I'm going to ask some basic high-level questions. Like you mentioned that you pick the two protagonists. You pick either the male or female version of the original character. Is there like an original cast as well beyond that, or is it just you immediately go into getting the crossover characters from the different realms or whatever?
It starts off with like the original like story of like, hey, the tutorial has you like helping out Hawkeye bust out of prison, and then like the tutorial boss fight is like the three big faces from Trials of Mana. Like when you're at that platform, there's like big three heads at every direction.
Mana beasts.
Yeah.
They have different names in the translation remake. I forgot what they're called.
Yeah. But then like after that initial tutorial, you're introduced to like you're kind of put into this like starter area where you kind of meet these new characters in the Mana series, like Honeycomb, and then I forgot like the girl.
The girl's name is Duffy, I think.
Duffy. And they're your typical like, oh, we barely met you, but I think we should get along. And what are you trying to look for? You kind of save them from trouble, and then they assist you in your adventures. But it's a really really basic story. Nothing really complicated about it early on. So it does have its original
the whole story premise, the way you described it earlier, with the echoes part, it just basically seems like it's a crossover game, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's not a. I would ask another basic high level question. Like if I'm interested in a new entry in the Mana series, is this quite it, or is this more of a just like more of a series celebration?
It's more of a series celebration.
I go with the latter. But
yeah.
If there's a series to recommend, I would suggest Trials of Mana remake as a first entry or something like that.
Me too. Yeah,
which is also available on mobile.
There's definitely more for the Mana fans. I don't think there's a great entry point into the Mana series. Really, I mean, and then for Mana fans, they'll enjoy like parts of it where like I think there's a new event that went live on it where you do have the Seiken Densetsu 1, 2, and 3 character, like the main heroes kind of meet up for a tournament arc story in that, but it's not really, I don't think newcomers to the Mana series will really get anything out of it, especially because the game is just like, it's lackluster, I want to say, because on top of like just unresponsiveness and like the controls and like the frame rate not even like holding up, like the technical performance, especially for an action RPG that you want to like be more proactive during like dangerous like stages. Like sometimes it'll just like dip randomly, sometimes it'll just it won't perform to like how you want it to perform for an action RPG. It's not smooth at all. And even then, like outside of battle, like going through all like menus in that game kind of sucks because there's always like a small loading screen in between like every portion of the game that you're trying to get to, which is really annoying, and it I don't know why it's not a smoother experience, because it's not. I don't think it's a really taxing game graphically.
I don't think I experienced that in my end. Then again, I have a decent phone, so.
I mean, yeah, I'm
wow.
on. Dang, that's fucked up. I mean, I'm on Android, but and I've also used.
I'm playing on an iPhone 13, so.
Yeah, so maybe it's better on iPhone, But I tested on Android. It's like a BlueStacks emulator, and it's not as smooth as I would want it to be. Maybe iPhone is different. I'm not sure, but it should be a better experience to like navigate around that game, and it really isn't. As for it's a mobile game, there's a gotcha element to it. You do gotcha for characters in that game, and so like starting out like the featured banner right now off the get go is like SSR Rees and Duran from Trials of Mana, but there's also SSRs for like Popoi from Secret of Mana, Sumo from Adventures of Mana, Shiloh from what was Shiloh from? Was it Dawn?
Shiloh is the Legend of Mana male
Legend of Mana,
protagonist.
right? Yeah, Legend of Mana, and I've played and Reese and Angela. So they don't have like all the entire cast for like a lot of the Mana games there. You do get some representation like the lower rarities, for them, but like not everyone has an SSR version. So you do have that. You also in the same thing when you roll on gotcha banners. It's not just for characters; it's also for equip cards, and you know how that goes. Where higher rarity equip cards will give you more stats and probably have more powerful effects.
It's kind of weird. Maybe not weird, but I had that like 2-week run where I was playing Near Reincarnation, and I'm like nodding my head, like, yeah, yep, I've experienced this in my short little window into this.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy it.
Did you mention there was pity as well, Josh?
I didn't mention there's pity. I was describing the gotcha banners, but yeah, I mean, for people who play these games, there's a pity system where, after 2010 rolls, so 200 rolls, if you can choose one of the banner units, if you ended up not rolling them. So there's that, though. I don't think you'll. It's not necessarily an easy pity to get unless you're really saving up. The rates for this game are like 3% for SSR characters, but they're divided up. So it's like in that 3%, if you roll an SSR, you'll have there's a 1.5% chance for it to either be the banner, the rate up unit, or be off banner. So it's like 50-50 split on that rate up. But other than that, it's like there are like elements of mana throughout like the whole progression system of that game, down to like you have like different currencies to like level up every single like stat of a character. You can level up their HP, their mana, their strength, their intelligence, their spirit, their constitution or defense. So it's like you can level up their physical DPS, and magic DPS, physical defense, magic defense, luck. Obviously, not every character will benefit from like a stat. So say like Duran, he's a physical attacker. So like you'll definitely want to focus on like leveling up his strength and his HP first, because you want him to do more damage, more so than like you want to raise his like intelligence. So there is like choices you make and how you progress characters, but they all consume mats that you have to grind for in dailies, and so on. And also like the more you use like a certain type of weapon in battle. So let's say I'm using a party of like Duran, Angela, and Popoi. Angela uses a staff, Popoi uses a boomerang. And the more you use these characters, the more you're leveling up like your weapon skill with them, and that's just like a profile thing, a player account thing, where you get like passive buffs. The more you play with them, So like sometimes after you complete a stage, you'll say sword skill level up, staff skill level up, boomerang skill level up, and that's just adding like more like passive like damage bonuses to your account over time because you're playing more with that weapon during combat.
So the weapon thing you mentioned basically sounds like Secret of Mana and a few other games where you had several weapons to choose from, and you basically power them up through exercised use. And then the stat thing you mentioned sounds similar to Trials of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 3, and hopefully, like the agility stat isn't completely just busted.
But unfortunately, there is no agility stat.
I'm trying to remember. I think in the original Seiken Densetsu 3, if I remember correctly, one stat was completely just like glitched and didn't do anything. And I think it was agility.
Agility and luck. They did luck. So your characters can never crit, making Hawkeye one of the worst characters in the game because he's supposed to rely on crits. And there's a fan patch that apparently fixed this bug, and they supposed to rebalance the game around it or something. But I'm not sure if he would go for the game again trying something out like that.
But I mean, that's just a very basic overview of Echoes of Mana. It's I don't know if I'm gonna stick with it, to be honest. Like I've played a fair bit of it, and like I've almost like completed almost all the content that's available for it at the moment. But it's like it's not really interesting. There's not really a hook to it. Oh, that reminds me. This is also like one of those most devious things you can do in like a fucking mobile game, but like it works. There's like an armor system in this as well, and you can grind for armor, and all the armor has like rarities. You can grind, so harder armor daily stages and harder like main story stages will drop higher rarities of that armor, and that armor every time it drops, it has randomized stats, as a randomized base stat and a randomized substats to it. So let's say. Go for it.
Now, this just reminds me of the whole reason I like dropped Fire Emblem Heroes so quickly is when I found out, it's not enough that you get the 5-star pull. You have to hope that it has the right like Pokemon like IVs or some shit like that, or nature, and it's like that's too much.
It worse, it's actually one of the worst. You actually need 10 extra dupes to make that character perfect or competitive for PvP. It's awful.
Yeah, for Fire Emblem Heroes, yeah. Oh man, you're reminding me of dupes. How dupes are in this game. Okay, so with the armor and accessory system in this game, there'll be stages where you can drop armor, and there'll be stages where you can drop accessories. Each armor and accessory in the game is part of like a set. Like you can construct like a matching set, like 3 pieces of armor, like the Valsena set, like a Valsena helmet, a Valsena like gauntlets, and a Valsena armor piece. Like if you equip them all, you'll get the 3 set bonus of like 18% boost to strength, and that's a lot. That's good. You would want that on someone like Duran, for example, because he would get a lot of attack out of it. But each of these individual like armor pieces to that Valsena set, when they drop, not only can they have like randomized rarity, but you can you can tackle higher difficulty stages for like a 4-star or 5-star drop. But like when they drop, like they can have their base stat could be anything. It could be like defense plus 18 or defense plus 1.8%. And and usually when you're trying to min-max something, you would want the percent rather than the base flatline additive to it.
Basically, they took the gacha equipment system from Summoner Wars or Epic 7 or Genshin Impact.
So and then higher rarity armor, like say like that same like armor piece that I'm mentioning. So let's say it has like its base stat is like defense plus 1.8% or like constitution for physical defense. And then if it's like the higher rarity it is, the higher the more slots it has for bonus stats on it. So like aside from that, you'd have like bonus stats like strength plus 1.5%, spirit plus 18, intelligence plus 3%, and then as you level it up, this armor piece, like it at certain breakpoints as you're leveling it, it'll add random bonus stats to that. So like it can add, so like say I get it to like level 4 and level 8, at the level 4 breakpoint, it may add like intelligence plus 25, which is totally separate from the intelligence plus 1.8% bonus stat. Or and then at the level 8 breakthrough of that armor piece, it could add like another like 7% to the plus 3 strength that was previously mentioned on that. So
I hate that system, to be honest.
equipment system is totally fucked in this game in the long term, because it is highly reliant on RNG. Not only in not only in what rarity it drops at the higher stages, it's also RNG on what what the stats on it are gonna be. And it's also RNG on like what bonus stats you're gonna get as you're leveling it.
You know why I find this system hilarious though?
What?
People defend it in Genshin Impact that it's okay, but people ridicule it in Epic 7. And the only reason they ridicule it in Epic 7 because there is a PvP system. So because there's no PvP in this game, I don't think people will ridicule it as hard.
Yeah, yeah, you do have a point. Like, maybe, who knows? They haven't added PvP. I don't know if they have any plans to add PvP. I'm not sure. There is a co-op system in this game, so you can like, go into a room with like 2 other people and use but you can have one party of 3 characters that you can switch between in co-op rooms, and then the same is true for the other people. They can have a party of 3, and then you work together to go tackle the stage. It's fairly simplistic in that, but yeah, who knows how that's gonna shake up. At the moment, it's like, oh, that's a fucking abyss right there. That's just nasty. And lastly, since you reminded me, Chow, of how dupes are handled in this game, it's weird because there are 3 ways to like power up your character aside from like leveling them up with tomes and through the stat system um that I mentioned earlier. But like there's 3 ways to like progress them after they've like been powered up. You can increase their stars. So let's say I roll a 4-star Durand. If I want to get him to 5 stars, I would have to roll. Okay, let's back up. It says either or. I would either have to roll other 5-star characters, and I could use those as like ingredients to feed into it for the 5-star, which is really bad, and no one should ever fucking do that. But it is definitely an option if they want to do that. Or the game does give out like items, or like separate like item cards that are like 4-star rarity, and then their main function is to be like that fodder to like rank up to 5-star.
A lot of gacha games share this system. I would say it. What was the example? I think Azure Lane or something like that, where you get like a little fodder piece to rank up your character. I
Yeah,
think the fodder item is it's called the Benevolent Figure, which is a statue of Flamey.
yeah. Yeah, Vanilla Dawn icon or something. Yeah, so like you can use that. It's the same thing for like 3-star characters. Like if you want to rank them up to 4-star, you would use like 3-star Benevolent Dawn icons to use as fodder to rank them up to 4-star. So you can use dupes that way. And I'm sure like if when you roll more like lower rarity dupes and you have no use for them, you can probably start using them as fodder for that. You can also, the primary use of dupes though is through I think it's called, there's ascending, which is getting the rarity up. Then there's unleashing. Unleashing is where you actually use dupes of like the same exact characters. So let's say I rolled another 4-star Duran, I would use that as fodder to unleash him, and that'll boost his stats and the effectiveness of his skills.
I find it also raises a level cap. I see like a plus icon on the character.
I think the ascending raises the level cap, but then but the +1 +2 you get you see on on a character icon. That's like when you fed dupes into them. I don't know if it's like if unleashing also raises the level count. It might. I'm forgetting, but I definitely know Ascending does. And then once you've once you finally built up a character as much as they can be built up, after you've unlocked all their mana boards for their stats, after you've max ascended this person, you can finally use another feature called Awakening on them to basically get them from level 99 to level 100 and get their final 6-star. And then you can have a 6-star character there, and that's like their maximum, like you built up that character as much as you can at that point. On top, this is totally separate from like optimizing their equipment and everything too. And then I assume like the meta game, like in the long term, will be like you'll want to have the like ascend like lower characters, like lower rarity characters, like say 2-star to 3-star, and then like maybe you ascend them again from 3-star to 4-star, and then use that as fodder for your native 4-star characters. And it'll just be a fucking mess and abyss of like fucking gotcha MOBA game, as like character progression systems. It's just like an endless black hole at that point.
Yeah, I could see the red flags coming. I mean, there's already people leaving like bad Google reviews because of it, because they can see it.
It's dude, yeah, it's I don't know. And this was made by Right Flyer Studios. This is the creators of Another Eden, the Machi mobile game, like Memoria Freeze, Heaven Burns Red when they worked with Key. And they developed other gacha games. So I mean, they're experienced, but I think I don't know. Like that right now, like it's fine. Like when you're like kind of at the very beginning, you don't know much. And once you start really digging into like, oh, this is what the actual like end game looks like, and it's just like the fucking hell of like optimizing equipment and like praying for RNG to not fuck you. It's just like, oh god, dude.
There wasn't so much RNG, but that's kind of how I felt when I could kind of see how it fit together for Nier Reincarnation. That's when I was like, yeah, okay, I've had my fill. I'm not, and the story there wasn't enough to carry me. And I kind of feel like the slice of player that would be interested in Echoes of Mana is like the person waiting for the next Mana game who's already played Trials of Mana, who's already played the Legend of Mana remake last year, or the remaster, I mean. And this game seems like it's kind of feature filled and has plenty to do if you get into it. But the person that's into it, I don't know, as someone who has only played a little bit of Secret of Mana growing up, like I'm like, if I want to play another Mana game, I'm going to play Legend of Mana, or I'm going to play Trials of Mana before getting into this.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I don't know what the lifespan of this game looks like. I don't know how long it'll last, because Square Enix is they're very inconsistent with like how their games perform, because like stuff like Dragon Quest. Go for it.
Sorry, I was convinced like after Star Ocean's mobile game that Romancing Saga Reuniverse would have been dead within a year, and it's been what, 2 years now since it went up, which it seems to be doing all right. I think you know better than I am.
Has a very good following in Japan, but I'm not sure the global. I dropped the game pretty early.
If the global servers are also extended to Asia, maybe Asia is like keeping that game, the global version, alive. I'm not exactly sure if the global version, like the English version, shares like it's the same client with Asia. If they are, then I think they're probably in good hands, because even if like the English version may not be performing up to par, maybe like the Asian audience is.
Though actually, I think I remember reading that one of the main reasons that they've kept it alive, well, maybe they didn't say it that way, but it's because they've been pretty consistently having no SaGa remasters coming out. And maybe the thought process is, well, we might as well keep it alive because we can just take the opportunity. Hey, there's a new SaGa remaster coming out. We can just like have a renewed push for the mobile game because, hey, it's like can kind of feed into both releases.
Yeah, I mean, because you can have like marketing campaigns of like, hey, like like say a new SaGa remaster is coming out, you can have like a campaign in the mobile game that says, oh, you'll log in, to celebrate like the upcoming release of this remaster,
So maybe that's it, and
And that's then we can go back to Adam's favorite idiom. I don't know if that's the right word, but like the mobile game being the tail wagging the dog, or just like get your stable population of the people who stay up to date on all the service game or the mobile game, and then use that to advertise, hey, we've got a new SaGa remaster or whatever coming out, and now we have a new banner for them. Also, you should play the new game too, or whatever.
I think Echoes of Mana as it stands right now, I don't think it's sustainable in the long term. I think they'll definitely have to like tweak things as they start learning.
Okay. Will Echoes of Mana, because during the 30th, by the way, I looked it up. It was the 30th anniversary event a year or so ago that announced the Echoes of Mana, the anime, and that they're working on a new Mana game. Do you think Echoes of Mana will survive until the next mainline Mana game?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think because I don't think the next Mana game is like super far off.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they can always do a remaster of Dawn of Mana. Takes no effort.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think. I think the next mainline Mana game isn't like, I don't think it's like a decade away or anything. I think we're maybe seeing like 3 to 4 years at most.
Gotcha.
That's my gut feeling, but I'm not sure. Like, I think this game will stay up for a few years. I have no idea unless they really turn the game around. At the moment, I don't foresee it being too successful until they really get their shit together.
No, thank you for your impressions of Echoes of Mana. It sounds like it's got a lot going for it, even though you kind of have to know what you're getting into with gacha games. And some people like me who have learned that that's not for them are like, all right, we'll just wait for the next entry. But if you're up to date with the series and you just kind of want something that kind of celebrates what it is so far and the future of it, maybe it's something that you want to spend some time with just to see and check it out. Adam, I know for the last couple of weeks you've been in the middle of some life things, some moves, and some availability has been a bit spotty. But in the gaps, I know that you've been working on kind of like backlog-ish games that you've been wanting to play through, but haven't had a good excuse to until now. And it seems like every day I check our little staff Discord, and you're playing something different, from the original Metroid to some other games, the Yeast games that you talked about a few weeks ago on the podcast. And it looks like you've got listed here that you have decided to play the original 2 Zelda games, which are games that I have not played, even though I've played pretty much every other game in the series. Are Zelda games RPGs? Kind of, not really. But we do talk about them here on the site because who's going to stop us? Adam, I kind of want to hear about your experience having gone back to play The Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of a move. So right now I'm in like a temporary apartment as I wait for my stuff to arrive to my new apartment. So I don't have like my PC set up or my console set up, but I do have my handheld on me. So I have my 3DS, and my 3DS, I have, a bunch of virtual console eShop games on it. Some of those being some of the NES or Game Boy era games that they had on the virtual console. So I just kind of figured, just like you said, I played almost every Zelda game, but I hadn't played the original 2 on NES, The Legend of Zelda, and then Zelda 2 Adventure of Link. So I just kind of figured, I've been meaning to get to them for a while. I have them available to me right now, and a lot of my other games are not. So why not play them? And based actually on your comment that Zelda games aren't RPGs, oddly enough, the second Zelda game, Adventure of Link, definitely is. Mm-hmm. It's like out of the entire series, and I already knew this before playing it just from osmosis. But out of the entire Zelda series, it is the most RPG out of any of them, like easily. You have EXP, you have grinding, you have random battles in a sense.
Even more of an RPG than Breath of the Wild.
You can grind in a Zelda game.
Yep, you need to gain EXP to get stats.
You also needed like pretty much at this point a strategy guide to get through Zelda 2.
Yeah, so starting with the original game. Actually, how I'll start this is I'm a pretty big fan of games like Link's Awakening and the Oracle games, which were on Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And it's very clear and very obvious that they basically are like molded from the style of the original game in terms of, how the combat works, how the exploration works, how the menus and items and equipment works. Obviously, those games are more polished, maybe a little bit more quality of life than the original. And maybe a little bit more guided, but it's a similar style of game. So playing the original Legend of Zelda, I was actually enjoying it quite a bit. I was kind of following just like a a bare bones guide to kind of help me like know where to go, because the original Zelda gives you basically no direction. You are basically plopped on the world map and you can go in any direction. There's really not very much dialogue at all. The only dialogue in the game is occasionally in caves or in the dungeons you'll run into like an old man who just gives you like a really vague clue, like go behind the waterfall or something like that. And so otherwise you pretty much just wander and explore to find here's level 1 and here's level 2, and you kind of just find them on your own. And so it's that sort of game where you just kind of have to pick a direction and go in it and see what you can find. But otherwise, it plays pretty similarly to like the games I mentioned, Link's Awakening, and the Oracle games on Game Boy, in terms of you have your sword ability on one button, and then your other button is like your boomerang or your bombs or whatnot. And so playing on the 3DS, you do get the save states, which I abused a bit. We're like going through a dungeon. If sometimes you run into a room that's a little bit like more like a trap, and it's like a monster house almost, where you just get surrounded by a bunch of enemies, which is actually pretty darn tough. And so things like that are pop up here and there in terms of like balancing. But otherwise, it's just a pretty straightforward game with a pretty simple concept in terms of what you need to do. And it's not really surprising to me after playing it. Like, this came out in 1986, that this was one of the most popular games on NES. It's like very apparent why that would be the case. The one thing about it that kind of soured me on it a little bit, and you don't really see this in later games, is in the second half of The Legend of Zelda, the dungeons there. So the dungeons in these Zelda games, they're very compact. Like, the rooms are like right next to each other in terms of the map. So you have like imagine like the last dungeon in the game is almost like a I think it's like a 10 by 10 grid, where every block on that grid is a room. And sometimes, or I should say oftentimes, there's a lot of rooms that you can only get to by bombing a wall. There are so many just rooms that are basically inaccessible until you bomb a wall, way more so than like Link's Awakening or Link to the Past or whatnot. So I kind of found myself originally just like bombing every wall to see, is there a room here? Is there a room here? And then eventually I just kind of followed a guide, like, okay, where are these bombable walls? Because there's just so many. And I didn't want to waste all my bombs. And so that was one of those things.
I have to ask, did this game still have the different sound if you hit it with your sword, or no?
No, it doesn't. Oh. At least I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
No, I don't think so.
So,
gotta check.
Yes, it was just like, why are there so many of these? And also in the dungeons, I feel like in later games and these 2D Zeldas, every room in a dungeon has like a pretty clear purpose to like why that room is there, whether it like houses a small key or the compass, or maybe just like a chest full of a lot of rupees, or maybe it's just a room to get from one room to the other. But in the original game, there are a lot of rooms, especially in the later dungeons, that like for example, you're at like a fork in the path, like, oh, I can go up or I can go right. And if you go up, like I mentioned before, it's just like a room with like a bunch of enemies in it, and then you beat them all. And it can sometimes be kind of tough to like do that without getting a lot of damage. And then you're like, your reward is 3 bombs. It's like, oh, thanks. So there's a lot of like dead ends like that, where it's just, there's really no point to going into this room. And so I feel like later games,
the point was the journey. You survived. You had a thrilling combat encounter, and you got 3 bombs.
So in terms of like dungeon design, it's sort of these 3 things. It's like you have these dungeons that are like gridded in a way. I feel like later games do a better job. Like when you look at a map, you can see like where the paths in the dungeon are and whatnot. Where in this game, it's almost just like a spreadsheet, like, or a graph paper, where it's just 10 by 10. The rooms are just all like kitty corner next to each other, and so like the dungeons themselves are not like they're just kind of very basic. There's
are they
too many bombable
distinct?
Walls? There's just like different color shades. Like this dungeon is green and this dungeon is orange. Which it's NES, so
yeah, it's fine.
Sure. And then like there's a lot, especially in the later dungeons, a lot of just like dead ends where it's just like you go into this room, you beat a bunch of enemies, you get you either get like 5 rupees or a bomb, and it's like, that's it. That was the point of this room, and you could have just ignored it. And yeah, but I think the strength of the game is the overworld. Really, I mean, the dungeons are, besides small complaints later on, like early on and otherwise, um, are obviously fun, and you get different items to progress through different spots of the game. But I think like the overworld is kind of the seminal part of this game in terms of exploring through a game. It's not like level based like a lot of NES games are in terms of wandering, secrets, dungeons, things like that. So moving on to the second game, Adventure of Link. The original Legend of Zelda I don't think is that difficult. It's tricky in a way, but there's plenty of opportunities to heal yourself and to get around if you need to. But the second game, Adventure of Link, is like legitimately hard. And I don't necessarily mean that as like a failure of game design. It just does not give you a lot of room for error. Primarily, the game is very hard to like heal yourself. There's not very many ways to heal. So you only have like 5 blocks of health or whatever, and different attacks to different amounts of damage. But like if you're going through a dungeon area, you basically want to avoid as much damage as possible because it's just so hard to find places or ways to heal. So like every little nick that you might take into from some random enemy, which can sometimes be hard to avoid, can be like deadly. It's like, oh shoot, this guy hit me and now I only am down to 4 blocks of health for the next several rooms. And so it's just, you have to be extremely careful in how you play the game. I guess I should mention, if you're not aware, Adventure Link is a side scroller. It's the only game in the series that's a side scroller. So pretty typical of side scroller RPGs. You can jump, you can dodge, you can duck, attack in the air or while ducking. Eventually, like partway through the game, you get the ability to like jump and like stab upwards or downwards in the air. You get certain magic in the game. Like eventually you get a magic where you can shoot a fireball from your sword, or you get a magic that basically is a shield that makes you take less damage, which is actually one of the most useful spells in the game. But it's a side-scroller RPG. The thing is like I feel like Link's sword is really short, so you have to get like pretty darn close to the enemies to be able to hit them. But of course, the closer you get, the more likely you are to get hit. It's just kind of amusing. You have to get like so close to stab them with your like puny sword.
Yeah, the knife, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty much a knife.
Yeah, it looks like a pocket knife to me.
And you have an overworld in this game, even though it's a side scroller. It's kind of like a typical JRPG overworld, right? Like you leave the town. In town, it's like a side scroller. You run left or right from building to building. Each town has a place you can heal your HP and magic, but like the dungeons don't. But like you leave the town and then you're like on an overworld, like a classic like Dragon Quest game or whatever. And then like on the overworld, you can find like enemies that you can run into. It's not random battles. I think I might have said random battles before, but like you run into the overworld and a couple of icons appear and they move pretty fast and they're kind of hard to dodge. And then if you run into them, you basically run into like a mini like battle screen, almost like pretty much like an RPG where you fight off, 3 or 4 random enemies. Again, almost like a Star Ocean game or something, like the original Star Ocean. But you gain experience points for beating enemies, and when you gain experience, you can level up your attack, your defense, or your magic. So it is an RPG, like from every definition you could possibly want, except for like choice. But it's an NES game. But yeah, this game is one of those games where if I had like a counter of how many save states I used, I'd be embarrassed. It's probably like 100.
I played Fire Emblem 4 and probably used several hundred save states. So
it's the sort of thing where it's just like one of the hardest parts of the game. Actually, pretty obvious. One of the hardest parts of the game is the last dungeon. But before you even get to the last dungeon, you kind of have like this like trial like through this valley that has like a lot of enemies that are hard to damage or hard to dodge, hard to damage, that are just difficult. And so like I basically go into a room and be like, save state. All right, let's see if I can get through this room without taking damage. And if I like took a hit, I'd be like, reload, get through the room again. Because health is like a premium here. Very hard to heal. And so I think it's the sort of game where if you were taking your time with it and like because if you die, you basically start over from like the very beginning of the game and have to like work your way back. So like you could slowly learn a room and the best path through it, and then if you failed, you'd have to basically start from the beginning and work your all the way back. So it's kind of like from the very beginning of the game. There's no real like warp system at all, so it could get a little tedious. So I basically just avoided that by doing save states. But yeah, it earns its reputation for being difficult. I otherwise enjoyed it, but it is the sort of thing where like it would have been a lot more frustrating and a lot more time consuming had I played it like on an actual NES. So, but otherwise, I'm glad I played it. I can now say I think I've played every mainline Zelda game except Triforce Heroes, if that counts.
Have you played Four Swords Adventure?
Yes, I played the GameCube version as well as the what was it? There's like a handheld version. It was like a Game Boy Advance.
They're two different games. There's Zelda Four Swords for the Game Boy Advance, and then Four Swords Adventure for the GameCube.
Yeah, I played both.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and technically, Four Swords on the Game Boy Advance isn't even its own game. It was like just an additional like pack-in with the Game Boy Advance version of Link to the Past.
Yeah, that's right.
It did get a re-release on DSi, which was a full remake, which was free, and then it was. It's weird. It's like, I guess it's like lost media now because you can't download it and you never will be able to again.
That's interesting. Adam, one last question. This might seem a little bit weird, but does the 3DS Virtual Console version of these games, does it give you like an ability to look at the original manual for it or no? I don't think so, but I just want to check.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Well, the only reason I ask is because like I'm just like the story for those games, if I recall correctly, was just usually a couple pages in the manual was where you'd get most of it.
Right.
So I just wondered if that was preserved in that way or not.
I don't think so, but then again, I didn't really like look. So
all right, no, that's fine. I was just curious. But yeah, no, really, like the game that I played this last week is probably less of an RPG than Adventure of Link. I guess I'll just segue into that. But no, I think it's really cool that you had the opportunity to play some games. Like you said, like, well, I got my 3DS and I got these DSi or these Virtual Console games. Might as well play them while I have the chance. So cool to hear about your experience with the original Legend of Zelda and the Adventure of Link. So last week I talked a little bit about Weird West, and I know it's a game that not a lot of people are interested in, and it probably doesn't. I kind of talked about how I was struggling with the game mainly because I didn't agree with the way that its itemization worked. About if anyone listened to last week's episode of the podcast, I had started Weird West. I was a few hours into it. This is kind of an immersive sim / CRPG game that released late in March. And the thing that I didn't like about it is that how almost all progression was tied to these items that you found in the overworld that either gave you perks or abilities.
Yeah, I remember watching you, and you were just in some like random Wild West town, went into some random building, walked up to the second floor, opened a random cupboard, and then there's like, oh, here's one of these perk things. And it's just that's how you basically progress through the game. Yeah, you could have easily missed it.
And it's one of those things where, unlike the Adventure of Link, there is no EXP in this game. There are no stats. Well, there's stats on your weapons, but that's pretty much it. There's no like stats in terms of like your attack stat, your magic stat, or whatever. So one key component of Weird West, and this isn't a surprise or hidden, it's actually like a key selling point of the game that I actually think is interesting in many ways, is that as you go through the game, you will shift from character to character. There are 5 in total, and the main thing about that's connecting these characters is that each of them wakes up from a dream where they are branded, and each character ends up meeting kind of a recurring cast of mysterious entities. Like there's one that's like a young girl, there's one that's like a heathen witch, there's one that's like an undead like sheriff or something. He goes by the name Pain. And you kind of learn, like as you go through these characters, a lot of people are talking about like soul binding and the search for immortality, and basically almost kind of like Fullmetal Alchemist way, like binding souls to inanimate objects or into creatures or animals. There's this other character who is not immortal but is trying to like research it because he's like desperate to become immortal. He's not a good person, named Essex Mast. And you kind of learn like, well, what is my role in this? Because we're these characters that our souls keep getting branded, like, and all these people keep calling us passengers, and there's a lot of mystery and a lot of intrigue. And I actually think that this story conceit is actually really, really like novel and different, where it's just like instead of a cast of characters, like whether it's a JRPG standard like your party, or a Western RPG your main character and companions or whatever, it's something slightly different than that. It's a little bit different take on that. So narrative wise, theme wise, just the general vibe, I actually think it's really quite interesting. However, the way the game actually plays is frustrating as all hell. And that's kind of been my thesis for the whole game so far. For instance, when I finish the first character, Jane Bell, and I go to the second character, who is a pig man, he is a man whose soul has been bound to like this grafted pig monstrosity. And
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's and basically what happens here, it's like, who the hell am I? How am I connected? What is this? And that was interesting and fine, but you do not transfer any of your abilities. You do not transfer any of your items. You do not transfer any of your money. You are a clean slate, new character. Now, there are ways to like transfer items. Like if on the first character, who is the bounty hunter Jane Bell, I had either deposited items onto like the saddlebags of her horse, or like into the bank, you can retrieve them on the next character. So what this ends up doing is that's convenient and that's useful. And
that feels like to me like before you'd want to know when her character story ends, and then like before it ends, just load everything you possibly could into her saddlebag.
Exactly. And I was actually kind of getting to that. So what ends up happening is once you're like, I think I'm near the end of this character, I'm going to just start priming the changeover, where I'm going to just shift everything to the next character because I'm done with this one. Now, there's some reasons why you might not want to do that, because you can actually recruit the older characters into your posse for the newer characters. So once I'm playing as the third character, who is actually like a Native American named Across Waters, you can go back to like the Bell homestead and recruit her, and she still has all the items that that you originally left her. So like you could say like, well, instead of transferring over all the stuff, I'm just going to let her keep it and then go back and recruit her. But that's not always easy, because sometimes you start as another character on the other side of the map, and it's like, well, that pigman that I was just playing as, and I don't say the pigman's name because it has like a lot of the vowels cut out of it. I don't know how you pronounce it. So you kind of end up with this weird system where you end up having to like figure out how to play around the game systems, because like you said, I'm near the end of the changeover point. What items do I want to transfer over? What items do I want to keep and then go recruit them later? And then also it makes it so it's like you mentioned, finding these items that give you the ability points to unlock abilities. It's like, okay, I could be thorough and explore all these chests, and because these ability points can just be hidden in containers on enemy bodies. You could go scour the map and try to find a whole bunch of them. But it's like, okay, do I want to bother doing that? Because if I just play this character story out, I'm just going to shift to the next anyway, and they're going to have a new slate of abilities. Oh, actually, I say a new slate. I know I'm saying words like perk, ability, or whatever, and they're probably like different games use those terms like interchangeably. So abilities are character specific. Perks are more passive buffs that you keep from playthrough to playthrough. So every time you change characters, you do kind of want to find perks, because every time, like, perks are something like get 50% extra health or jump higher or things like that, and they're passive and they persist from character to character. So you always want to find those. But the abilities are into two tiers. They are either weapons, like you can fire a silent shot on your rifle, or you can cause a bleeding shot with your bow and arrow or whatever. Or they are character specific, like the pigman can do a charge attack, or the Native American can be more stealthy, things like that. But all the characters use the same suite of weapons: rifles, shotguns, bow and arrow, pistols, or melee weapons. And all of these abilities are the same from character to character, but yet you still have to pay for them on each character. So if I'm using the Across Waters and he uses a bow and arrow, or I decide to have him use a bow and arrow, and I give him all the bow and arrow abilities, and then I play as the next character who is a werewolf, I could, if I wanted to, have him use the bow and arrow, but I would still have to buy those same bow and arrow abilities again on him. So there's just this weird, like, there's a lot of caveats and trade-offs and footnotes whenever you shift characters, where I think the way that it presents the story, the narrative of it, is all really interesting and different and novel, but just playing it is just almost frustrating.
I mean, it sounds kind of like, I'm trying to understand, like, what is the design intent here in terms of having you switch characters? I mean, is it more like a narrative thing? But I feel like from a gameplay perspective, it sounds like it's just really frustrating, almost just starting like a new game in your old game.
The narrative stuff is actually I think the game has a really cool vibe. and it's different and it's weird. I mean, the game is called Weird West, which I still think is a terrible name for the game, but it's just a sort of story that is a bit just not what you typically see in an RPG, which are all like grandiose or epic, or even if they're not epic, they have like this linear progression where it's very clear who the antagonist is or what the journey's destination is. Not in every case, obviously. I don't mean to be painting with a broad brush, but this game, it's like when you're playing as the first character, Jane Bell, it starts as this story of revenge where it's mostly this, your family was killed or abducted by this rival gang called the Stillwaters. And you kind of deal with them and you sort of learn that they're being manipulated by sirens, this supernatural force. And then as the pigman, you basically learn that this witch who was basically a cultist decided to just be like going crazy, and she's researching this soul transfer stuff. And what she does is she had an experience where it's heavily implied that her ex-husband raped her, and she basically takes men that are criminals, thugs, bad people, and says like, you don't deserve to live, but instead of killing you, I'm gonna like steal your soul and basically transfer it to this grafted pig abomination, and now you can't speak and you can't remember who you were. You're a mindless thrall. And then as you kind of learn that that's how these pigmen came to be, you kind of, during the character that you're playing as, you're like, well, if it's true, what type of person was this character in a past life? And you end up meeting his ex-lover, and basically you learn that you were a terrible person to her and she hates you and she wants you to leave, and you ask for forgiveness and she basically says, no, you don't deserve it. And you either just get on with your life and try to be a better person from now on, or you can, just play into that role and just be an asshole. And it's kind of like the way that story was slowly unveiled, I thought was kind of interesting and different. And there's another part of the story where this is more the vibe of the game. You're trying to learn this location of this secret gold mine that has kind of driven people insane in this lust for wealth to like an absurd degree. Like anyone who ends up being like tempted becomes the term in the game is called ravenous, and they get glowing blue eyes whenever they're like corrupted by this like almost supernatural greed. You find these like 3 lockets that each have like a section of a poem on it that kind of tell you where this location of this hidden mine is. And then as you go to the location of the mine, and you're trying to search for the entrance, and the backing theme ends up becoming a vocal theme that is singing the lullaby that you just read on the locket, which isn't that novel or interesting, but I just thought that like, oh, wow, that's a cool vibe. Because if you didn't actually bother to read it, you would have just been like, oh, this is a vocal theme, whatever. But it kind of tied like the gameplay and the aesthetic together in a neat way like that. That's kind of been my impression of the game so far. I'm on the 4th character out of 5 now, and I probably won't speak about Weird West again until I write the review for it. Interesting story, interesting premise, kind of a cool vibe. I know I keep saying the word vibe, but I don't know like a better word for it. Different, just not fun. That's the unfortunate part. It's just I don't enjoy playing it very much. So
that
maybe
tracks with what I've heard from other people playing it too. Is that like, cool tone, but not so fun to play.
And the last thing I'll say is that it's because there is no experience. Everything is basically based on itemization. How many health packs do you have? How much ammo do you have? Did you find a better pistol or not? So it's almost like you're not incentivized to fight things. So I might be in a cave with a bunch of bears, and I'm like, I could fight all these bears, but that would cost ammo. I might get hurt and use a health pack, or I'm just going to avoid this. Like I might not even bother entering this cave because maybe there's a perk item at the back of the cave, maybe. But do I really need that? I don't know. Like I'm low on ammo and I don't want to bother, so I'm just going to leave. And when I'm enjoying a game to some extent, but like I decide just to skip sections of it because I don't want to play that section of the game, it's kind of a bad admonishment there. That's kind of been my feeling with Weird West so far. I will hopefully within the next couple of weeks write up the thoughts formally in a review, and then next on the podcast I won't restate the same impressions and just kind of point to that for my final takeaway. So interesting game. Maybe watch a playthrough on YouTube or something if you think it's an interesting vibe, or if you think you are okay with a small amount of tedium. Go ahead and give it a try. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of gave my fuller impressions now that I've seen this character swapping mechanic in action, which I hadn't seen last week. And then the last game on our list of games to talk about this week is Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. And the reason why we're talking about it this week is because the release of, I'm going to butcher this, of an Ultimate Strike, Ultimate Raid, Ultimate Challenge Raid. Yeah, all right, so before I hand it off to James and Chow, I want to ask some basic questions about just the format and like the progression of Ultimate Raid. So my understanding is that this is an existing combat encounter, but tuned up and with new story / mechanics attached to it. Is that correct?
Not
Not
quite.
exactly.
Nope. All right.
So
Then enlighten me. Go ahead. What is the new Ultimate Raid in Final Fantasy XIV?
Okay, so back in Stormblood, after they toned down Savage Raid's difficulties, they came up with the idea of having an additional like encounter that was meant to be super long, super difficult with a bunch of different phases that would require you to have cleared the at the time current Savage Raid tier in order to even challenge. And that's when Ultimate Raids were born. The first couple were in Stormblood. The third was in Shadowbringers. We were going to get this one, Dragonsong's Reprise, and originally planned for patch, I think 5.5. But then because of COVID and like everything, like pushing their development schedule way back, they had to postpone it until Endwalker, and we finally got it. So usually one of the other conceits with Ultimates, besides the fact that they're again meant to be the ultimate challenge, especially if you're doing them on release, you need best in slot, you need to know your rotation basically perfectly, you need to use food, you need to pot during burst phases. It's like
Everything needs to be perfect.
What is
it's
pot?
Pot is using a potion
potions.
to get a temporary strength boost to do more damage for like a 30-second boost window. So
yeah, it's not really a big deal in anything besides Savage Raiding and Ultimates, but in 14, pretty much every job, especially if the with Endwalker's changes, has a 2-minute burst window. So every 2 minutes, optimally, you're supposed to deal your most damage in a burst. It lines up with every job in the game. So you're supposed to pot during your burst windows whenever potions are up. That way you can maximize the buff that it applies. Because the when you use a potion or a tincture, for 30 seconds you get that buff. So it's very, very like limited in scope, and you have to like weave it in right as you're about to do your like most amount of damage. I don't even know where to begin. One of the other conceits about Ultimates is the very first one was based off of the original Realm Reborn raid tier, Coils of Bahamut, and was called Unending Coils of Bahamut or Ukab. The next one after that was based off the Realm Reborn story, so it was based on the Ultimate Weapon. So the Weapons Refrain, I think it was called.
yeah, people call it short for Uwu. Ultimate weapon, ultimate.
With Shadowbringers Ultimate, it shifted into the Heaven's Ward raid series. So Alexander, so you had the Epic of Alexander, and because they already did the Heaven's Ward raid series, this current Ultimate is Dragonsong's Reprise, which is a reimagining sort of / what if of the Heaven's Ward main scenario. And as of right now, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but if you're at all into rating, you already know about it. And if you're not into rating, it doesn't really matter because you're not.
Upcoming spoiler for Heaven's Ward. Click to the next timestamp if you haven't played it.
Basically, the conceit is everyone knows how Heaven's Ward went. People died, and there was like a specific character, Harshafant, who basically protects you, and in the end, like dies so you can continue on the fight.
Is that the okay? I might get this completely wrong, but is that the guy that says a smile better suits a hero?
Yes, he is.
Aha! I know who this guy is.
So it's been fascinating because the Ultimate came out, and based off what the minstrel says and what who's the person you talk to pick up the fight, and also what the duty text says, it implied that there was a way to save Harshafant in this raid. It's none of this is canon; it doesn't actually impact the story as a whole, but it was fascinating because the very first phase deals with that. And he dies, you continue on the fight, and then after phase 3 it loops back to the end of phase 1, and one of the mechanics you have to do is you need to tank limit break 3 to both cleanse healing debuff and protect him, and then you just need to keep him alive as that one mechanic at the end of phase 1 happens, and then burst down like the fear of light that originally kills him in the story, and you just need to break it and save him in order to continue on the encounter, which is a really interesting twist. But
I think that's a smart idea for like something that's a very high level challenge that only a small percentage of players will be able to experience. How do we make it have like this meaningful story interaction, but not feel like players are literally boxed out and making it a what if story? I don't know. Seems like kind of a
I was like reading. What was it? People like to call it, make fun of this. To call it the Final Fantasy VII remake, the fight. Basically, this gives you a alternative timeline. Basically, if he was alive, then you don't feel as pressured to stop the main antagonist in Heaven's Ward, and now he gets free reign and do all this evil shit, and now he gets even more powered up, and now you fight a super form of him.
basically, the anger that you and your allies feel after losing Harshafont is what puts the pressure to really chase after him as quickly as possible. And if you didn't have that extra push, things would have spiraled out of control way quicker. Is the main conceit. It's really fascinating. As of the time of this recording, nobody has finished the fight. There have been data mines of some of the final phases, but it does look like there are 2 more phases left, something like that.
How long has the fight been out?
Like 5 days, I think.
5 days, yeah. Keep in
Radiant's got
mind,
to they're up to phase 6. I think that's as furthest as they go. They don't stream their fights because they don't want people to like kind of know their strats.
So TPS is a raid group. It's short for thoughts per second. They're generally the front runners, and their whole thing is that they're really really good at figuring out mechanics, but they're maybe not necessarily the most consistent when it comes to rotations, DPS checks. They get there in time, and that's the reason they don't stream. It's because they understand very well that their strength lies in the ability to figure out mechanics. There's even been people like accusing them of like data mining to try and figure out mechanics ahead of time, but I don't think there's any proof of that. And the devs have outright acknowledged their world firsts in the past, so it's moot either way.
Have they been active like the whole life of the game?
I don't think so. I think they just got started around either Stormblood or Shadowbringers. I think they might have actually been Shadowbringers.
I think it's like world first in like Eden times. I think it was.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting, just like how we have like these online games, and with these high levels of PvE challenge like this, you have teams that kind of come and go with the ebb and tide. But I don't know, just the fact that these games kind of have this like exterior lore to them, I just always think is an interesting component to their communities.
I also don't think they would have won the last world first if people didn't have server issues as much, because in the last Savage tier, I think there's a different group that would have beaten them if they didn't have like server connection issues. There was a lot of people getting DC'd, and it kind of kills their static runs,
So have I assume James's group has been attempting this raid?
Yes. So Chow's group just finally cleared P4S, which is the Savage tier. But they need to, in order to even really attempt it, you need to be best in slot. So it'll be a little while further before they have a chance to properly attempt it. My group has been making pretty decent progress. We've only had 2 days worth of raiding. We're not like racing for world's first, hell no, but we're mid-core. We're meeting 4 days a week, 3 hours each. So far, we have made it to phase 2, and I'm actually really happy with how we've been performing. Like, none of us are really stressing about it, but there's this one mechanic that people have been calling like Knights Rampant in phase 2, and we ended up executing the first mechanic of it with 2 dual tank tethers and proximity AoEs and whatnot within an hour of getting there, when apparently even some of the world first raiders that just specifically waited a little bit so they could kind of peek ahead at mechanics, it took them like 2 hours to get a successful like execution of it.
Well, I was surprised
holy
that
shit.
this is only the 4th ultimate in the game.
The reason why there's like not a lot of ultimate is because they would have to test it with Yoshi P's static. He has like a group of developers that are really good at the game, and they need to test it and balance it. And it was hard to get them all together during COVID time because if they can't beat it, they're not putting this out.
Yeah, that's fair.
I wonder if all MMO developers take that approach, or if there's sometimes like, well, we can't beat it, but good luck. We think that theoretically you can beat it because we know the systems or whatever.
Wasn't there one of the Castlevania games or Castlevania successors where they said like their developer needed to be able to beat a boss without being able to get hit in order for the boss to be like approved?
Yeah,
Sort of
that
reminded
was
me of.
for,
I feel like that's for a game like Castlevania, that's fair, because the one thing I hate the most in like games like that is when I get hit and it feels like there was literally no way I could have avoided it.
that was in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. You guys
Yeah,
said
that's what I
that in an interview. But yeah, that's the reason why the new Ultimate took so long, is because they just couldn't find the time to get all the developers on the same
It's
page
perfectly understandable.
to play, to test this out. What happened was they had to get Endwalker launch ready, and they just didn't have time to work together. So
Yeah, makes sense to me.
But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with the encounter. There's no real point in me describing the mechanics because there's all these different like live streams and VODs out there. If you want to see what the fight looks like, go take a look. There's really no point in me describing the mechanics because if you want to know what the mechanics are, you're probably already considering doing the fight. And there's like other resources out there. I am definitely not
So I have one last question though. Like, let's say I am playing Final Fantasy 14. I'm pretty into the game, but I just don't have a static, and I probably just don't have the time or effort to put into learning the fight and winning. What are the things you can earn from completing the fight? Like, can you get like best in slot gear that you can get there and nowhere else, or is it purely cosmetic, or like what are the in game like rewards for it?
Technically, yes, in the sense that the weapon that you get from clearing the Savage fight is, as of right now, eye level 605 with 2 materia slots. The weapon that you get from clearing the ultimate will be eye level 605 with 3 materia slots.
And what goes in a materia slot? Sorry, I'm a novice.
Well, a materia, which you can use to buff any of the non-maxed out stats for the weapon. Like, I'm assuming that the critical stat will be maxed for the ultimate weapon, so it would be something like direct hit or determination, something like that.
it's technically the best weapon in
So
the game.
it's technically better, but it's very, very like marginal.
It's by a minuscule amount, and it's not going to be like some. It doesn't really matter anyways, because it's like ultimate is the highest end content. Like people parse fights and all that, but if an ultimate's current, nobody's gonna care if you got like a gray parse or a blue parse if you get it like before eye level increases, because if you cleared the ultimate when it's still like brand new, that's like you. I don't care what people say, you're a good player.
Right.
It's bragging. It's the real prestige right there. I mean, I have seen people try ultimates from like fresh right now doing T or the Epic of Alexander. It took about 6 months for them to beat it.
And that's like not the fresh ultimate, because like fresh ultimates, again, it's like it's the hardest content in the game, the hardest it'll ever be, because there is like a hard cap for what your what your gear can give you, like in regards to HP and like DPS and whatnot. That there's like, even like when you get like, there is like item level syncing, like this ultimate will sync to 605 despite the weapon from Savage Raids being 605. The current max high level is 600, but if you did next tier and you got a bunch of essentially ultimate exclusive bis once the next patch comes out, and I say ultimate exclusive best, but I don't mean it's like you only use for ultimate. It's just like, because of the way that item level syncing works, sometimes when item level like increases, like the max increases, a different gear might be more beneficial just because of the way that sync works. So that you get to the situation where there's actually some like dungeon gear that after item level sync is bis for the Epic of Alexander now, I think.
yeah, people go back and farm like I think it was like level 500 something gear, just because that's the best in slot. Because when you down sync maybe like a level 600 gear, you not exactly get the best stats. So that's why they farm at even lower level gear so that it syncs properly.
But
Well, that's
the
one
point
way
of
to
the
keep
matter
older
is,
content like relevant, which is kind of neat.
yeah, but the point of the matter is that the fight will get easier over time just due to the extra bit of eye level, which it'll only be like a few percentage points difference. But when some of the best players in the game are struggling against these DPS checks, and let's say they're like 1 or 2% off, well, if everyone in your group has 2 to 3% like better like equipment, like just statistically, that'll make it that much easier to clear the fight. So it all adds up and whatnot.
It's all about the proper strats. I think the hardest part with doing these ultimates is how long of a fight it is, and it takes so long to get to that one point, and you just keep dying it to test it again.
Yeah. That's the other thing about ultimates is that like a normal raid encounter in Savage is around like 10 minutes. And any fights that are longer usually have a door boss section so that it's like a checkpoint. So for example, P4S, it has 2 halves. Each of them is about like 7 minutes each. So the overall encounter is 14 minutes, but as long as you clear the first half, you only have to worry about like keeping it together for 7 minutes at a time. Whereas while there is a small checkpoint for the current ultimate, it's like 2.5 minutes into the fight. It's the by far the easiest phase because it's the first phase. And then you have like 15, 16 minutes of the rest of the fight with nonstop mechanics that require pinpoint accuracy and like almost instant reflexes in some cases. And it's not just knowing your rotation, not just having the right gear. It's also just like an endurance test. It's the hardest.
Did you say
content in the
how
game.
long like a successful ultimate poll? And I know not for this one because it hasn't been finished yet, but the old ones, like how long does that end up taking? Like 15 minutes or longer than that?
More than 15 minutes or longer, yeah.
Okay.
It's like us doing P4S, but without having a checkpoint, and do it all perfectly and a little bit more difficult. That's basically
Way more difficult. Not a little more difficult. It's like, God.
Well, I would say a little bit more difficult because everything kills you instantly anyways, right? But imagine trying to survive all this mechs for 15 minutes straight.
Let me put it this way. Imagine if you saw every mechanic in P4S in half the time that the normal fight takes to explain and show everything.
And you have to play it clean, because if you can't do it clean, there's no way you could clear this fight. And that's why I believe that we're not ready for this ultimate fight, because when I did it, I feel like if we can't do this fight clean, there's no way in hell we can clear this. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I actually have another session with Static after the podcast is done. I don't know how long it'll take us to get the clear. Hopefully it's before patch 6.2. That would be nice. But I think it's scheduled for August.
I think this is the first fight that Silpha, or I think it was like one of the people from TPS, is already complaining about how ridiculous difficult this is. He didn't even say this about T. I think they were laughing at T because they cleared it in 3 days.
Yeah, it's like I've seen some of the later mechanics, and it's like, oh my god, there's so much going on screen at once. It's like, what the fuck?
We got a video for you, Brian. Just watch this thing. Anyways, I think that's it for our opinion of the DSR, the Dragonsong Reprise.
Well, yeah, good luck. Hopefully we will hear about success before the end of the year at some point. All right, I think that covers us for the Games Talk section. We covered most of the features that are up on the site. There is one other feature that was up on the site that Alex Donaldson put up that I do kind of agree with, but I'm not sure I agree with how strongly that Alex put it up. So, okay, I guess I'll just introduce it. So Alex put up a feature on the site about Nier Automata and its propensity for being involved in crossovers, and how he basically has found that it's kind of he thinks it's no longer interesting or novel to have that, and he thinks that he wants to see Nier 3 or whatever that is in the future of the series before seeing any more crossovers. I don't, the feature is up on the site, and you can go ahead and read it if you give it a wish. For me,
I think the crossovers are dumb, but they're easy enough to ignore.
That's kind of where I'm at. where they don't.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. But it's also Yoko Taro basically saying, if you pay him, it's like I'll put whatever collab in whatever product you want.
Yeah,
It's just like the dude literally said, "Hey, if you give us enough money, we'll fucking do anything." And then everyone's like, "All right." So
and what
mean,
spawned this was Nier ended up getting a crossover in a PUBG spin-off. So not only a crossover in PUBG, but what is the spin-off game called? New State Mobile.
hell yeah.
And it's been in I thought he had a list of crossovers in here, but
I mean, I can give you a list. I mean, do you want a list? It's been, I guess, it's been recorded that it's at least 25 crossovers so far, and some of these are very recent, like Babylon's Fall. But it's had one with Fall Guys. I don't know, Soul Calibur 6 that a lot of people really liked because she was actually a full playable character in there. Showed up in a lot of gacha games like the Octopath Traveler, the now shut down Star Ocean one. Then you have
Fantasy
other
Star
ones.
Online 2.
Yep.
I don't think this list is that bad. It's just that she appeared in like 2 bad collabs and Alex is freaking out.
I mean, it's proliferated in a way that's like it's very prevalent now. Like it used to be novel, and it's like, oh, she showed up in Soul Calibur 6. That's freaking cool. Or like, oh, it's like when the game is still fresh. Like, oh, she showed up. Like we didn't know like back then like that 2B was gonna be like fucking almost everything. I'm not gonna say almost everything, but like it's gonna show up in a lot of places. Like in a world where there's still like no new Nier game. Because last year's Replicant was a remake of the first game, not a new game necessarily. But no one really foresaw that like, oh, they would really go out all of this. And it makes sense in the sense that like they're benefiting, they're getting easy money, and the people that they're crossing over with, for better or worse, whether it's working out for them or not, like this is a way to entice people to play or check out their game. And for some people it really works. Like a lot, like I'm sure Soul Calibur 6 did get like a boost in sales from people who wanted to play 2B in that game as a fighting game character. And the sales numbers of Nier Automata don't lie, So
I'm kind of with
sense.
Adam where like nowadays when I hear that there's a crossover with Nier, I'm just kind of like, it doesn't move the needle for me, and it's like, okay, whatever. Like there's 1,000 games where I could play as someone in a 2B outfit. Or not 1,000, but at least 25 according to this list. But
I'm surprised people don't care about Colgate Ryu in
like
Fortnite.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I was about to bring that up actually. To me, it really doesn't matter because like I'm so used to things getting collab. Like Street Fighter has done a collab with a million things, and you see Ryu in a shitload of other games. You saw Ryu fucking with a machine gun in Fortnite. It's like, yeah, hell yeah. I just like things get popular, and like for me, it doesn't like devalue the IP like in a weird way for me because like I enjoyed the things that I like. Like,
it doesn't make me less excited for Nier 3 or whatever.
Yeah, like if I like go replay Nier Automata, it's like, oh, I feel so devalued because I've seen 2B in so much other shit. Or like it's not like when I pick up and play Street Fighter and like say play Ryu, like, oh no, I can't pick Ryu. He's been in so many collabs and he's been sold out to so many other things. Like I don't see it like that. I'm just like, I just play the things that I like and find enjoyable and don't really let other media like influence that.
I do like one of the comments on Alex's articles is like, they said they would gladly say yes to anything. Gotta respect it. So I guess
right.
That's true.
I mean, they have the hustle, All
right. So with that out of the way, that's up on the site if you want to look at it. And we'll go into the news section. It's been a quiet week for news, but here's a game that was officially announced, I believe, last year, but it occurred at the 20th anniversary event for Utawara Mono last November. And maybe James can remember the details here, or Adam, but they announced during this event a new RPG called Monochrome Mobius, Rights and Wrongs Forgotten, but there was no official like footage of it. Do I have that correctly?
There was a stream, but they did not save it. Like it wasn't VOD.
It was. It took a while for it to be uploaded. It just wasn't up immediately after the stream.
But they did show footage of it.
Yeah, they did show footage. Like they showed actual gameplay. They showed like a cutscene. They showed a lot actually. Like for the first showcase.
Okay, so again, the title of the game announced last year during the stream event is called Monochrome Mobius: Rights and Wrongs Forgotten. It does take place in the Utawaremono universe, and it is a turn-based RPG. And we got today, or not today, we're relaying the information today, this week, the announced trailer for it, which basically is a long trailer that's 5 minutes long or so that shows the story conceit, footage, a lot of the animation work being done for the game. It's got a trailer with both. The audio's in Japanese either way, but there is one with there's an official English trailer as well with English subtitles.
All right. So the most important thing, which you're kind of beating around the bush for this, it's a worldwide release.
Yes, it's got a release date on September 8th of this year,
which is massive. There were a lot of Trails fans, Falcom fans, quote tweeting that announcement, being like, "Man, Utawaremono gets a worldwide release, but Trails is a 3-year delay," and it's like,
It is kind of wild, you never really expect it for Utawaremono.
And these are very text heavy games.
Very text heavy. It's very niche. Like even JRPG says that series is still pretty niche.
Well, apparently the PC versions have been doing pretty well, and one of the things that helps it is that Shiravoon doesn't just do English for their PC releases; they also do Chinese and I think Korean. Don't quote me on that. Definitely traditional Chinese as well as English. So since they can handle both translation from Japanese to English and Japanese to Chinese, it just works out that it's like, okay, well, maybe just the English-speaking audience wouldn't be enough to justify a worldwide release, but the Chinese audience too, that might do it. And who knows? The fact that this is a worldwide release, it's obviously got a bit more budget to it. I am sad that it's no longer a tactical RPG. I really liked Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth, especially. But it definitely looks better. The fact that it's a worldwide release, the fact that the Mask of Truth anime is starting up in a few seasons, and I think something like that.
It might be summer this year, I think.
Yeah,
they're doing a Mask of Truth anime again.
They're doing a 2-core adaptation. So hey, maybe it'll actually be good. Who knows? But yeah, I think this is good. I think there's a decent chance this will do well. The elephant in the room, and I actually I'm going to write up some of my own thoughts about that. I talked with Alex about it a few days ago. It's really fucking weird. I understand why it's PC only in the West. Like, Shiravoon does not do console releases. And if it's releasing in September, people are like trying to cope by saying, oh, maybe NIS America will. No, NIS America is 100% not doing this. Like, if you look at what they have released, what they have like scheduled for the rest of the year, including the fact that Trails from Zero is also releasing right around the same time. No, they're not going to do the console versions. Like, if they do, I'll be happy. I'll be surprised. But it's like, if you're an Utawaremono fan and you played through the trilogy on PS4 and Zon on PS4, you're going to have to play this on PC unless you can read Japanese. Unless there's some like small hope that Aquaplus will put English text on the Japanese like console release, which I highly doubt it. Yeah, it's PC only in the West.
Yeah, it's PC only in the rest. In Japan, it will be on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Who did the console releases for? Was it Nice for Zan?
Utawaremono has a very complicated history of like publishers.
Basically, Mask of Deception,
Atlas.
Yeah,
like, it was originally Atlas.
Yeah, Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth were like some of the last releases that Atlas did when they still had to actually like do releases that weren't just Sega Atlas games. And then by the time Prelude to the Fallen, the remake came out, they didn't want to do it because it's like, well, they needed to use their resources elsewhere. So Nisa swooped in and basically did the localization for that. And
I forgot, did Nisa eventually like get the previous Utawada Rumono games
no,
from Atlas? Okay.
no. That's actually another wrinkle to this, is that while you can buy Prelude to the Fallen digitally on PS4 and Vita, you cannot buy Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth digitally on PS4 and Vita. They have been delisted as of about a year ago, I want to say. Something like that.
Yeah.
So while it does suck that you're not going to be able to play this game on console in English, I feel like most of the people that played this game and these games in the West at this point have probably played it on PC because they run on toasters, and the PC releases have been out for a little while now. Like, I think the PC version of Prelude to the Fallen's been out for over a year, and Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth have been like two years at this point. While the ports aren't amazing, it's like, well, here's one thing: like, all three of them are Steam Deck verified. If you end up getting a Steam Deck, you can play them on there, and who cares if they're 720p 30 FPS locked ports?
And
You're
they're
playing it
also
on the
just,
Steam Deck.
it's cleaner too, like in terms of like a behind the scenes perspective, because Shiravun has done all the PC
Yeah.
of the previous games. They didn't have to wrangle with Atlas and Nisa for them. They just kind of like Aquaplus let them just like let them take in the reins for the entire thing. And I'm sure that's probably why we have this situation with Monochrome Mobius, especially Falcom has already run into this problem with Nisa. Not to say that's Nisa's fault, because Nisa has been doing really like a really great job, staying crystally busy. But Falcom has run into this like problem now with Nisa taking in the Kiseki series of like they're just too busy with other stuff too. They have their own releases to take care of. While Shiravun is they have other projects in the line, but there seems to be a cleaner pipeline for them, unlike with Nisa.
Yeah, Utawada Mono is basically their bread and butter at this point for Shiravun, which great for them. And if it's like doing well enough that they can justify a worldwide release, that's awesome. But I don't like, despite it being a real problem with how long it takes for Falcom games to get localized, I don't think it's 100% fair to the way that people are kind of throwing this at like Nisa's feet. Well, there's certainly things they could be handling better. I feel like you have to be the most defensive. I don't even know the best term for this. I know people that say, "Oh, it's fine that they're taking so long to release Hajimari," or I mean, Trails into Reverie in the West. And it's like Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure had finished translations when they sent them over to Nisa, including the new content from the PS4 versions. Yes, they need to wait for ports. Yes, they need to implement the translation, but I'm sure it could have taken less time than this, and they could have sped things up a little bit. And it's just very unfortunate, the situation we're in.
I think it's just an unfortunate situation all around, because like while they most likely would have to, if they wanted to like give priority to Falcom's releases, it would affect a lot of their pipeline. Like
it already has. I mean, we have like NIS America employees on Reset Era outright admitting that the main reason that we haven't gotten Labyrinth of Gallery in the West yet is because of the Falcom releases, and that we won't be getting it until 2023, over 2 years after it came out in Japan.
Yeah, so it's just, and then they also have all these other projects that they're working on, like with the Nisa Classics, and they have the other localizations even before the Galleria. It's just like Nisa has become too stretched too thin at this point. Like they've had some great partnerships, and they're releasing things left and right, but they're tackling on too many projects and spread too thin that will like satisfy the fans of certain audiences.
Yeah, and I'm sure part of it is they want to make damn sure they take their time with the Trails releases, if only because they know after Ys 8 that the Falcom community will get on their case if they mess up a localization. So it's like, it's good that there's that pressure there, but it does mean that they ideally, it would be great if they could expand, but I don't think their games are doing well enough that they can justify it. So
yeah, I don't think they can expand right now either. I think it'd be too risky, too tumultuous right now to even try doing that.
Yeah.
Question wise, how successful is their most recent Disgaea game, number 6?
I don't know. I don't think
The,
they
the, the,
talked
the-
about it.
I mean, did the PS4 and PC version come out yet? Like that. I guess
The
that'll.
PS4, PS5, and PC versions are coming out later this year.
It's
Yeah.
June.
Yeah, so I guess we'll really know, like, because the Disgaea 6 was only on Switch. I don't know how well it sold there, but we'll get a better picture once it comes to other platforms, I imagine.
Yeah.
But
So looping back for Monochrome Mobius, it's releasing on September 8th of this year, and I guess when I watch this trailer, I can recognize that the art style is the same as in the Utawaremono games, but I don't know and it takes place in the same universe, but are there does it have shared locations, shared characters, anything like that, or am I free to jump in here, or is that not known yet?
It's a prequel, so this is gonna be
interesting.
It's like watching shows that you already know what's gonna happen to these characters later on, and you're like, oh, I don't feel good about this. But yeah, that's basically what I say about it. I saw the trailer.
But is it like a distant prequel, or these are the same characters prequel?
Same characters. It's like 20 years in the past or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Well, maybe less than that because of certain characters. It might even be as little as 10 years in the past or something.
As I understand it, they introduced 4 characters in this announcement, and 3 of them are existing characters, and 1 of them is new.
All right. Why did they drop the Utawaremono name from the game title? I guess that's my question.
Because it's a spinoff, kind of.
But isn't Zana spinoff?
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's a retelling. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a retelling. Because Zon is a retelling of Mask Inception, and Zon 2 is a retelling of Mask of Truth, that sort of thing.
Or maybe they just want a new series to branch off. Because
okay, will this be in the Utawaremono bundle that they sell on Steam, like all those games, or will it just not be in there like the Zon games were?
Well, the Zon games aren't even on PC.
Oh yeah, that's right. I thought they were for some reason.
Well, that'll be another RPG for September. The other one is kind of related. That's Trails from Zero is releasing officially in English and later in September. This will be September 8th, same day as Steel Rising, which is just a note. But yeah,
I think it's for me to finish it before Kuro 2. Thank God.
I look at the trailer for this game for Monochrome Mobius, and it kind of looks like a PS3 RPG, but in the best way. The animations are a little bit simpler, but the art style is really pleasant. It's got the cell shaded look to it, and it's a very traditional turn-based system. It looks like, which I think is kind of cool to see. And I don't know.
I think mostly play these for the story. Usually, you wouldn't really care about the graphics too much. So.
And that was really the major announcement of the week, but we do have quite a list here of just some smaller updates that we'll just roll on through. We did get another one of the Soul Hackers 2 Summoner Guide videos. So the first video, if you don't remember what that was the one that detailed the combat system, where I said, yeah, it pretty much looks like press turn, and then Adam and Josh were like, no, this is way different. This has the Sabbath mechanic and things like that, and I ate a little bit of crow there. So this guide here, Summoner's Guide Volume 2, basically talks about 2 things. It talks a little bit about the Milady character, which had a character trailer a few weeks back, and dungeon exploration. And now I want to be careful, and I'm like, well, this dungeon exploration.
Okay. Well, what does it seem like, Brian? What's the comparison?
It looks just pretty typical. There's enemy models on the screen, and you swing at them, and then if you run into them after attacking them, you get a preemptive strike. And if you
there'll be another RPG where you swing the enemies on the overworld, and then they fall down, and you have to run into them after they fall down instead of just initiating the battle.
I actually don't know. The falling down part I think is unique. I don't know another one specifically that has that. Normally, if you swing at them like in Persona 4, then you're starting the battle right away. Am I missing one?
No, I mean that's why I was wondering, waiting for you to make a comparison. I was like, name me another RPG that does that.
Someone in our chat mentioned that I think Tokyo Mirage Sessions does that, which I don't remember if it did or not.
I don't remember. I thought it always initiated.
If it did, it might make sense because this game is basically developed by the same team.
Yeah, that's true. Then I can totally see that. Maybe they did. God, I forgot.
It's one of those things you just don't pay attention to. Oh yeah, you hit them, and I don't remember specifically like hitting enemies and then just like going around the.
Me too. But this new Summoner's Guide thing for Soul Hackers 2 isn't really as interesting as the first one, because the first one actually laid out like how combat works. This one's just like, providing more story details that, the story is the story, and who cares, in my opinion. Like the things that were sort of interesting to me were what we were just talking about, like the how you explore dungeons and the overworld in this game. Basically, there are like shadowy like enemies that like run up to you, and then you can hit them with Ringo's weapon, and then they'll get knocked down, and then you can decide whether you want to run into them to initiate combat, where you'll have advantage if they're knocked down, or you can just run around them and save time if you don't really need to deal with them. And you can also, like, at the like beginning of dungeons, you can like send out your demons to kind of pick up goodies around the dungeon, and sometimes even recruit demons for you after you disperse them, and then you have to like manually like find them again in the dungeon and reunite with them. Is my understanding. Are there any other things that like caught your eye, Adam?
It was, other than that, it was pretty typical what you'd expect. Like you said, the first video where they introduced battle was actually like interesting in terms of the twists on it compared to typical, and now it's just like, this seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, now we're reduced to, oh man, if you hit the enemy with the weapon, they knock down now. That's what we're just reduced to now.
There were some story teases about some of the antagonists. There was Iron Mask, and then Iron Mask, or am I confusing that with Tales of Arise? Guy in an iron mask of some sort. And then he's got like this henchman named RS, who originally was sent to kill Milady, and then Milady was then revived by Rindo to be a soul hacker or whatever. So just a little bit of character premise and backstory there. I guess we should have talked about this back when we were talking about the Echoes of Mana, but alongside the release of Echoes of Mana, we did also get new details about the Teardrop Crystal anime. We got a key artwork, we got a teaser trailer, which mostly just talks about some of the talent and studios behind the Legends of Mana, the Teardrop Crystal anime, which will be debuting this year, and I believe it is worldwide. So I don't know what service will be holding it, but maybe Josh would know. I don't know if you have any interest in watching this, but
I mean, I'll watch it. I like Legend of Mana, and it is weird to show like an animation trailer with no animation in it, but they revealed like the designs of the characters, that how they look in the anime, and they look pretty nice. You see Shiloh, you see Elazul, you see Pearl, a few other characters.
So in Legend of Mana, first of all, the re-release of Legend of Mana had like a new animated opening from these same studios. So far, that's like our only clue to what the anime might look like. In terms of
the production is like Graphinica and Yokohama Animation Lab, I think.
Yeah, and I'm not in tune enough to know like what else have they done or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, in Legend of Mana has 3 separate storylines, and one of them that's probably the most involved and probably the most well suited for an anime adaptation is the like Jumi storyline. It has to do with like these basically sentient crystal people. Like these crystal people are each basically representative of a type of crystal or jewel. For example, there's a character named Pearl, what she's based off of Pearl. For some reason, the character based off the lapis lazuli, they call Elazul. I'm not sure why. They didn't call him like lazuli. And there's, Emerald and all that. And that story is pretty emotional and also probably like the strongest narratively in the game in certain ways. So I'm interested to see how the anime will do it. I don't have like high expectations because most anime adaptations just aren't that good, but I'm curious about it.
Yeah, and just anything that gives like the Mana series some love is to me it's like worth checking out. And I guess it's also worth mentioning like the Yoko Shimomura is doing the music for this adaptation as
well.
And
she did it originally for Legend of Mana, right?
Yep. And I believe there was an interview back when Legend of Mana re-released last year where they said the actual decision to make the anime here came before the decision to re-release the game, which I kind of find both somewhat strange, but also sort of like sensible because just animation just takes so long to like produce and do.
Yeah.
But obviously now Legend of Mana is available on basically all modern devices and even on phones. It just kind of randomly released on phones too. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, like now that you're reminding me of like a video. There's a little bit off topic, but it reminded me. I was watching a video on like the production of the anime adaptation of Mushoku Tensei. Is another anime that released and aired not several months ago. But then they were saying like the idea of making an anime adaptation for that, like the reason it turned out so good was because of like the long pre-prep period. Like it was like pretty much in pre-production for like 5 years. Said.
Damn, that's
like,
a long time.
I also know the switching like hemispheres a bit. I know the Arcane anime for what is it, League of Legends, also was like had like almost a decade long production, which is why it turned out so well.
So insane.
Yeah, that'll be releasing this year at some point. We don't know any timetable yet, but look forward to that. Here's just a random piece of news. We did get an announcement that Diablo Immortal, which it feels like 2018 was
alive.
What?
It's alive.
Yeah. So it feels, I don't know. Don't you guys have phones? No, I don't know. It's just from another time.
Season April Fool's joke.
Yeah, it's so it has a release date now. It'll be releasing on June 2nd. And then it was also announced that it will get an open beta on PC and that there will be crossplay between the mobile version of the game and the PC version of the game. With an announcement trailer, as well as with like an 8-minute video detailing the reveal. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's just so ironic after like the initial announcement, this like pushing like, oh, it's like on phones. Don't you guys have phones? And then now like, oh, we're back and it's also coming to PC. It's like, okay, well, I guess we all don't have phones then. No, but sure, I guess. I mean, they went into like they have this whole blog on like the decision to make a PC version and then all the sensibilities that they're gonna have, like with making the PC version, they'll obviously have like a robust like option set to like scale the UI so it looks less of a mobile game on it. But it like I don't know if I buy it, but like they said, oh, the primary reason we wanted to bring it to PC because we knew people were gonna play this on emulators.
And I don't know, like nothing I saw in the trailer was that interesting to me because it's all just combat, and I don't know, Diablo combat I think is really kind of boring, and I don't know, I don't have any really excitement for this.
I don't know, like I would, like unfortunately, like I don't want to reinstall BattleNet ever again, so like I might try it out.
Josh.
I might try it out on like a BlueStacks emulator maybe and still emulate like the mobile version, but I don't want to install BattleNet for it.
Don't worry, Josh. Give it a year and BattleNet will no longer exist. You'll just have to deal with the Microsoft Store.
Oh boy.
Damn, that's even worse.
I sorry, I have PTSD of Microsoft Store, so I don't know.
Well, it might be on Steam too, because Microsoft is letting their games on Steam. But...
yeah, but that's starting to release some of their older titles on.
We got a new, similar to the video from the Soul Hackers 2 that we saw a few weeks back. We got a combat detail series of videos from Nintendo for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. At least that's what I was hoping we would get. And I remember, like, we talked about the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 news last week about the release date being moved up, about the information about having 6 characters in battle at once. We kind of made fun of the UI, about how from a glance it's very cluttered and messy and hard to follow. But we know from experience, having played the first 2 games, that we know that eventually it'll make perfect sense. We talked about how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has this Holy Trinity system, having attackers, defenders, and healers. So when I heard that they were going to get some video primers about the combat in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I was like, all right, let's dive into this and let's figure out what this game does. However, it really only details the combat at like a very, very, very high level. Like if you've played any sort of any MMO or even any other RPG that has roles for attacking, healing, and defending of any sort, or let alone another Xenoblade game. This is pretty much just the basics of the basics. It talks about how you want to have enemies that will have combat lines between what they're aggroed against. You want to make sure that your defenders are the ones taking most of the attention, while your attackers attack from the rear, from the sides. About your healers, you want to keep safe so that they can do their jobs. Talk about being able to switch party members freely. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I really missed anything.
There's actually some sauce in it. Like for example, like healers are the only ones who can revive people in combat. So like in other previous Xenoblade games, anyone in combat can like pick up party members.
Run over and pick up a party member.
But in this one, healers are the only ones who can do that. So like they sort of have a like more value in them. Like but for people who played previous Xenoblade games, like the sauce in this is a lot more subtle. For example, like being able to just like do a dodge roll or dodge dash in the middle of a combat string is like big. You know, for people who played previous Xenoblade games, it's like, oh, that's really good because that makes positioning that much easier because we need to get to the side or the rear really fast. Because there will be skills that like will affect how like either their damage multiplier, or there are some skills that can't even be used unless you're in that position. And that's just really cool to see that like the combat system in this game is much more proactive in terms of like what you're actually how you're positioning yourself in combat, and of course it's a lot more busy since there's a lot more characters on screen and like during battle you have your whole squad with you. So yeah, it feels battles feel much more lively just on that alone. So I think there are things about Xenoblade 3 system that like I really like already, just like from the small taste of we've seen so far. But this is just coming from a person that's like played and understood like previous Xenoblade games battle systems.
Yeah, and despite how busy the UI gets, like I know eventually it'll make perfect sense. And I really actually enjoy the cooldown based systems of both the first and the second game, as well as all of its different variants, like with Torna and all that. So I really enjoy the Xenoblade combat systems, and I'm pretty sure this will be no different. I just don't know how 6 party members will feel, because I feel like that's kind of a fun little like buzz marketing point, like play with all 6 at the same time. But will it actually feel good to have that much like noise going on and imagining them all shouting, and whether or not that'll have a hit on performance?
Well, if you think about it, Xenoblade 2 already had 6 party members at the field at once with how the blade driver mechanic worked. Like your blades were also constantly chattering as well. So you know, I'm sure it won't be too different, but at the same time, it'll feel overwhelming from the get go. Just try to get acclimated to it.
We did get an update for the Japanese release of Kuro no Kiseki, and I hope I get these details right, James or Adam might need to correct me, is that it will be releasing on PlayStation 5 and PC on July 28th, but of course this is still just the Japanese version of the game, as well as we'll have subtitles for Chinese and Korean. So that's only for the PC version, so it has a Steam page, but will not support English officially.
You got one thing slightly wrong. The PC version is Asia only, not Japan.
In the sense it won't support Japanese, which, funnily enough, this basically soft confirms that NISA already has the license because the Japanese version of Niyuta on Steam was actually already published by NISA. It's just once the localization is finished, it'll be updated with the English logo.
And Clouded, so basically, it was like a concurrent announcement. Falcom themselves announced that Kuro no Kiseki is coming to PlayStation 5 on July 28th. And then Clouded Leopard Entertainment, which is they're based in China or Hong Kong, they announced simultaneously that it's coming to basically China, Korea, Asian regions on the same date for PlayStation 5, but also PC. And Clouded Leopard Entertainment actually has several of these Falcom games on PC that don't support Japanese. Like they support Japanese voices, but not text. Like for example, they released actually a Korean Chinese version of East 9 just earlier this year for that region. If you look up East 9 on Steam, there's 2 different versions of it. There's the English and Japanese text version, which we played. That's the NISA port. And then there's the Clouded Leopard version, which is the Asian version. So it's like the license for this is separate between what NIS America does and what they get for Asia. So it seems like this is purely the Asian version. So what James is saying is that this sort of confirms that someone else, probably NIS America, has licensed like the version for eventually English and Japanese. So
I
It's
think I
also worth
follow.
noting that the Steam version of Cold Steel 3 was like going by Steam DB was in development like over a year before even the PS4 version was announced for localization. So it would absolutely not shock me if Durante's team at PH3 is already well at work on the PC version of their PC version of Kuro, no Kiseki. But it makes sense.
Wait, so will this eventually have then two different Steam pages? One for Clouded Leopard
Yes.
and one for PH3?
If you look
That's so weird.
if you look up the Legend of Heroes on Steam, you will find a Legend of Heroes Hajimari no Kiseki page and a Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie page. Both of them are accessible to English Steam users, and in fact, you can buy the Clouded Leopard version for $60 US if
Oh,
you
that is
wanted
kind of
to.
interesting.
And like I just said, East 9 Monstromnox, there's two different versions of that. And you could buy the Chinese Korean version if you wanted on Steam.
Yeah, like especially with Hajimari, it's pretty transparent that Clouded Leopard knows what they're doing. They know that Misa is not going to have the localization out for a bit and that people are going to be impatient. And I'm not even going to blame them for it. And they're just going to buy the Clouded Leopard version and then use like an overlay, or even though there was a cease and desist for it, somebody else made a patch to implement the spreadsheet translation for Hajimari already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like you understand why they're doing it, and they're not saying why they're doing it, but it's like transparent what they're trying to accomplish with that. And it's like, it's not their fault. It's just like, man, very unfortunate situation all around.
And then related, also releasing on July 28th, this was also, I assume, announced directly from Falcom, is that there will be a PlayStation 4 complete box set that bundles in Japan Senno Kiseki's 1 through 4 as well as Hajimari. So basically the whole complete set of that story arc. So Cold Seals 1 through 4 and Trails into Reverie, and it'll be $150. Or it's 50,
They should have called this the Rean saga, dude. Dude, it's so sick. But yeah, this is a really really crazy deal for people who haven't bought any of these games. Like if you were to like divvy up the math, it's like probably like between $27 to $30 per game.
Yeah.
I don't want to know the math. I want to know the hours count. I want to know like
500 minimum.
dollars per hour here or whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Your money's worth, I think.
But that's
obviously
that's
no. It'll be interesting to see if we get a version of this once we have official Reverie. But
No, because of Xseed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Because we'll have different publishers. That's a good point for the first two and the later two.
Man, the Trails situation in the West is so.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Whenever Falcom announces like the next East title, they just need someone else to localize it and like double up that year. Have NAS America continue working on Trails, and then have someone else localize the East title.
Let's go, Shiraboon!
That would be very unfortunate because, like, wasn't East 9's localization really, really good? I haven't played it yet, but like everyone I know that
that's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm just saying you can't just expect NIS America to like work at like double pace for every single game that Falcom puts out on a yearly basis. You need to like have someone else help out somewhere. So give NIS America, give them Trails and give East to somebody else. Just do
Here's hoping that because East 10's been in development for a while now. I want to say close to like 3.5 years at this point, and then by the time it comes out next year, like presumably it'll be next year. It'll be like 4.5, something like that. Maybe the dialogue and all of that is done, and maybe Falcom has already let whatever partner they're working with for it start localization early. I know I'm huffing like copium right now pretty fucking heavily, but it's like,
yeah, you're talking about the Japanese developer that is like infamous for like having a fucking rewrites like a month before shipping.
it's ease. What do they care about? I hate this so much. Why am I even complaining? I'm not the one suffering. It's like, God.
Oh man,
I'm so fucking sorry, Falcom fans. Except for the people that gave me death threats. You deserve this.
Damn.
Yeah, it's just it's a messy situation, and yeah, those people can fuck off if they're giving death threats to anyone.
It's just a video game, guys.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just very unfortunate all around.
We do have a couple sales updates for this week. The big one is that Tales of Arise has reached 2 million copies sold. I believe this puts it third behind Tales of Vesperia and Symphonia, and it's tied with Tales of Berseria. Is it
That's
third
right.
or fourth?
Although Vesperia kind of is kind of cheating because it had like 3 different releases. So
Yeah.
But I mean, this is multi-plat, so whatever. But yeah, basically, right now, the best-selling Tales game, the number we have is, I believe, 2.88 million for Tales of Vesperia, and that's including like all versions of it, like the original Xbox, PS3, and definitive. So like, there's some double dipping there for sure. And then Tales of Symphonia is at 2.4 million. So that was a GameCube exclusive in the West. We got a PS2 version. I guess it did get the PC version and the PS3 version. So also multiple versions. Eventually, that's at 2.4. And then Berseria is at 2 million. And Arise is at 2 million. So it's at least top 5.
Yep. So they're doing pretty
well.
I think it'll eventually.
I feel like it's inevitable it'll be number 1 down the road, because you know how like Tales games go. They eventually become like
$5 seems.
Yeah, that's like.
So yeah, the fact that it was able to do that within less than a year and not have the double dipping, well, assumedly, maybe people bought multiple console versions, I'm not sure, but doing pretty well. Not sure exactly what Namco's like aspirations for it were, because obviously they sunk a lot more budget and time into this one, so is this the sort of payoff they wanted? Hard to say.
No, if they don't have high aspirations for it because they start getting crossword puzzles like Scarlet Nexus. So
what was that? So I saw this tweet about a Scarlet Nexus crossword puzzle. I didn't know what this was.
I don't know exactly.
They literally just tweeted just like a mini crossword, like for Scarlet Nexus, like please fill out the crossword, and like some, like which character has this power. And it's just like, okay, that's a social media strategy I haven't seen before.
Yeah, they have these like random like activities with Scarlet Nexus that like I don't think I've really seen with any other Bandai Namco like properties. Just like they have like I don't know, they have this weird like continuing marketing cycle for Scarlet Nexus that I don't think I've seen for any of their other games. They're just fun like little things for the game, whether it's like little factoids or like in this case a crossword puzzle. It's like whoever is really running that social media account for Scarlet Nexus really, really wants this to continue.
It feels like a lot of stuff behind Scarlet Nexus has been basically they've just willed it into being. They're just like, we're going to push for this. We're going to make this happen. And to be fair, that also had a sales milestone that we announced a few weeks ago, right? Well, what was Scarlet Nexus at?
We got the 1 million sales, 2 million players.
That's what it was.
Right. Yeah.
Because when you have Game Pass, it comes harder to like count. I guess It's not really a sale, but it sort of counts.
Some of those Game Pass players are filling out that crossword puzzle right now. Think about that.
Maybe, yeah. The other sales,
it's on Game Pass, and I can actually play it if I wanted to.
Will you fill out the crossword puzzle too?
No. I'm not even. I said I can play it if I want to. I'm not even committing to playing that game.
The other sales update that we got was for Atelier Sophie 2. Atelier Sophie 2, The Alchemist of the Mysterious Dream, has sold 200,000 units worldwide. And my immediate not concern is too strong a word, but this is, I think, pretty much on par with how most Atelier games sell, but not quite reaching the same plateau that Ryza and Ryza 2 did, which were both at about ballpark 500,000 each, correct? Because I remember they had this announcement early in the year where they said It was either early this year or middle last year, where combined they had sold 1 million. They said like Atelier Ryza 1 and 2.
Yeah,
had
Ryza
sold-
2, Ryza 1 is like at 600,000 and Ryza 2 is like 400,000.
I don't think this is really that much of a concern because first off, I mean, like how long Sophie 2 been out? Like a month and a half, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Late
And I
February.
mean, yeah, so 2 months. I mean, Sophie 1, not as many people played as Ryza 1. I mean, this is perfectly acceptable sales for what they probably expected.
Yeah, because
That would be my read.
People are hesitant to play sequels and haven't played the original, and Sophie 1 was before Ryza kind of bolstered the, I guess, the footprint of the Atelier series in the West a bit.
I've heard this one's really good. I will eventually get to it. Need to play more of my Atelier backlog because
Paige liked it a lot.
Is there any more announced Atelier games at the moment, or is just this right now?
I think this is the latest announcement.
We might get Ryza 3 this year, but I'm not sure because that's the thing with like Gus is that they can be insane. Sometimes they can just be like, we will release 3 Atelier games within this calendar year, and it's like, okay, you do you.
Is Gus actually working on anything right now that we know of? Have they announced anything like new?
They haven't announced anything, but it's a safe assumption that they are working.
Oh yeah, they're definitely working on something. Yeah, for sure, most likely that. But it's like one of those like weird like rest periods for Gus where like we don't know anything. So like it's like, are they at least maybe taking like a moment to rest?
Yeah, I mean, if Ryza 3 came out like late this year, that would still be a longer development cycle than usual, like Gus titles, because that would have been like 2 years in between releases, and obviously they'd be able to reuse a lot of assets, even more so than usual. I hope that Ryza 3 isn't this year, even though I'm sure it would still be great if it came out this year, just because, and this is something that a lot of people I know that have played the game have kind of came to the same conclusion. Ryza 2 was really shockingly good for only like 1 year of development time. Like the extra scope and whatnot, it's like, man, this is really fucking good. I wonder what Ryza 3 could be like if it had a normal video game development cycle that wasn't, we have to get this out in a year.
I guess we should shout out to at the time of this podcast recording. Like, there's a Koei Tecmo sale up on Steam, and I think it might be up in other digital shops too for consoles. Like, they have some of these games we're talking about on discount right now.
If you want to get into the Atelier series, now is probably the best time because they don't go on sale very often. Pick up Ryza 1 and 2 and you'll have a great time. But yeah.
Was Sophie 2 the first one with a worldwide simultaneous for Atelier, or was that Ryza 2?
Ryza 2 is not worldwide simultaneous. It was, I want to say, like a month and a half later.
Okay, so Sophie 2 was the first one.
Yeah, Sophie 2 was the first one for Atelier. Was what's the name? Was that Blue Reflection sequel worldwide?
No, it was like behind the Japanese release by like a couple months.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, then Sophie 2 was the... There you go. Maybe they're taking this extra time before the announcing the next Atelier game to cook up another worldwide simultaneous.
Yes, Blue Reflection Second Light was 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
That's pretty close.
So. That's still pretty close to worldwide.
Yeah.
We got some Final Fantasy XVI news, guys. Kind of.
It's spring. It didn't lie, right?
Right. So this news kind of came from an interesting original source, but then kind of proliferated through, people desperate for something to latch onto for news about whether or not we'll see this game this year or not. So we've had reported on recently about a partnership between Square Enix and I hope I pronounce this right, Uniqlo. The clothing brand, about 16 different Final Fantasy t-shirts to celebrate the series. We tweeted about it, and I think Alex put together an article about it as well. Just kind of a fun collaboration. We've seen this before between Square Enix and different merchandise partners. And however, in the latest in-store Uniqlo magazine, as a promotion for this series of shirts, they had a small interview with the producer of Final Fantasy XVI, Naoki Yoshida, and talking about the progress on the game and from the most, kind of an unusual source location. And basically they said in this little printed interview in the store magazine that they are nearing the finale of Final Fantasy XVI's development. That's pretty much the extent of the news, as far as I can tell from this interview. They talk about how they want to have people be enthusiastic about the game. They want it to have a better unison between story and gaming experience, single player, things like that. Some very like general vibe about what they're trying to like aim for in their aspirations. People have latched onto the fact like, oh, maybe this is a 2022 release after all, if they're nearing the finale of development. And we knew that they were holding off, and like the reason why it was absent from Tokyo Game Show last year is because they wanted it to be in a really good place the next time they did show it. So does this mean that we'll be seeing it soon? I guess is what people are hoping for.
Look, the best quote in this in this article is Yoshi P says, "I hope this will bring back the past enthusiasm of people who grew up to adults, got to know society, and thought real life is not easy like in the game."
So real life should be more like Final Fantasy 16.
Well, according to Yoshi P, maybe.
So I'm guessing at some point this summer we're gonna, because we really haven't seen much of anything from this game since the original announcement. We had some character bios show up. I know Alex has done a lot of not just Alex, but for our site purposes. But generally, people have done some speculation about where they think the story will go and things like that. But it's been really, really quiet. People are desperate for anything. This was kind of our shot in the dark pick. Was it for this year for our anticipated game? How did we word that?
I don't remember anymore. I have no idea, dude.
Yeah, I'm gonna look this up. RPG sites, most anticipated RPGs of 2022. Did we put this on there?
I want to say no. No.
Wow, it was our wishful thinking pick in 2021. So bad at this, apparently. So we just decided to put it on 2022 as one of our most anticipated. And maybe it's still wishful thinking, but according to this interview, maybe not. Near the finale of development, maybe we'll see a big blowout this summer at some point.
Completely random, but it's kind of fucked up that 2 years in a row there was like not many RPG releases until like half of the year's releases just like choke slam us in like 3 weeks in July.
Yeah. You know, it's also fucked up. Where's our status update for Star Ocean: The Divine Force? Where's that?
That is supposed to be this year, isn't it?
And I played all these other Star Ocean games to prepare for it.
Yeah,
I'm sure we will get updates on it and Final Fantasy 16 with whatever Square has planned for their totally not E3.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. No, they're gonna spend another 50 minutes on the new Guardians of the Galaxy.
We should just start calling it Key 3 now, since it's all Jeff Keighley.
So we had a couple, two more news items on the list, and these are both late additions. So, Josh, I think you're being coy here, but there was some big Persona news.
Oh yeah, dude.
So was this one of the anniversary like card teasers,
Yes.
or was this something separate? This was one of those.
This was the April live stream of the Persona 25th times. That whole string of like announcements the Persona series was getting to celebrate its 25th anniversary, and then for the April's edition, we got a concert at autumn in Japan. Woo!
Whoa.
Persona Super Live 2022. Let's go.
Has anything substantial this is immediately like disparaging. Has anything substantial come out of this 25th anniversary website teasing thing?
Persona 4 Arena ports were part of it.
Oh, was Soul Hackers 2 one of these, or no? That was
no. We were wondering if it was like maybe, but it ended up being just like I think the February one was the
was that like
that was the summer like event like Disney World thing.
Like the amusement land thing type deal that they were holding. I think that was it. Like they were like designating a space in Japan to like put up like a whole exhibit, I think. No, but for like the big announcement was for this month was in October they're having a concert, a new Super Live concert, but it does. This is not all doom and gloom, because they have announced things at the end of these Super Live Personas concerts in the past, like the Persona 5 and Persona 3 dancing games, I believe, were initially unveiled and announced after one of these Super Lives. I want to say maybe Persona Q2 as well, but I don't remember on that one. And also it being in October, being out in October, would line up with the time frame of the last announcement of these Persona 25th anniversary things, because the last announcement is supposed to be held sometime in autumn 2022, and it being in October, this concert, it would line up around there. So maybe there it'll show that last announcement for Persona, the big one, whatever it is, might show up there.
It looks like the next announcement will be in June. So stay tuned. Look forward to that. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean the only other things they announced here besides the concert was there's a new stage play that they're doing for Persona 5, and then more merch if you want Persona 5 Peppermint.
The last thing on the list here is an announcement of a remake for R-Type Tactics 1 and 2.
Yeah,
I do not know what these are. Why should I be excited for this, Josh?
These are PSP RPGs that came out, man, that was like 2008-ish. Yeah, 2000, like 2007 to 2008-ish. These were really cool, like grid-based, like takes on like the R-Type formula, because R-Type is usually like a side-scroller shooter, while in these games on the PSP, there's like an R-Type Tactics like spin-off that made them into fucking like strategy RPGs almost. They were really cool, and to hear that they're remaking this is like I'm excited. Have you played these, Chow?
I played R-Type, the original R-Type, and R-Type 2, and there's like many other games that copy its formula, because the R-Type ship has like a little orb in the front that blocks anything that any like small bullets and stuff. And there's like other clones out there. There's like the Neo Geo clone for it, which is like Pulsar, if anyone played that.
Yeah, these were like hexagon strategy RPGs. Like they reimagined like what R-Type is with these games.
It's kind of cool.
It was really cool. So man, it's one of those things that like me and maybe like 10 other people in the world. I'm like, yeah,
like yeah, they're probably doing a remake for 10 people.
I'm in. So it just I just wanted to give a shout out to like, hey, if any of you out there, one of the few R-Type Tactics fans or the people who remember R-Type Tactics and have fond memories of it, it's not dead. They're remaking those two games, and I'm really excited to see what they look like, because those were two really fun games on the PSP.
And they announced that these remakes will be in a single package, but not anything other than that, platforms, release date, anything. So,
yeah.
All right, and that covers us for the podcast. So kind of a weird hodgepodge, but some interesting things to talk about. It was cool to hear Adam's thoughts on Zelda. I was glad that I had the opportunity to talk a little bit more in depth about Weird West, talk about the trials and tribulations of ultimate rating in Final Fantasy XIV, and just some interesting updates on some games that we're looking forward to, some of them more substantial than others. Hopefully we'll get more substantial updates on Final Fantasy XVI too. I'm waiting to do a blowout episode on that and kind of get back to what that game was all about and get myself excited. Maybe that's a 2022 release. We can only hope. Anyways,
it's wishful thinking 2022 on the most anticipated this year. That's what it is.
So again, as we said at the top of the podcast, if you go to rpgsite.net, we do have all the features that Scott has put up from his trip to PAX East for those 3 indie games. And again, those are for Wrestlequest, Symphony of War, and Demeo. We have Alex's feature on Nier if you want to read that, as well as all the news that we talked about. The Monochrome Mobius, more detailed announcement. We've got the news for the sales updates and everything else that showed up this week. You can join our Discord by hitting the link at the top of our homepage or typing discord.gg/RPG site. You can find us on all the other social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for RPG Site and you should find us. And we will be back next week with another edition of the Tetracast. So until next time, stay safe and take care, and we'll talk to you then.
Later, everyone.
Can't wait for the Nier collab in FF16.